Hello, I'm Arthur Reed. Welcome to the World War II History Channel, where we explore the pivotal moments and untold stories of the greatest generation. There is a particular kind of heavy, breathless silence that falls over a forest just before the world changes forever. Imagine, if you will, a warm evening in the very heart of summer. The sun has finally surrendered its long hold on the sky, dipping below the horizon and leaving behind a soft, bruised twilight of deep purples and gentle blues. The heat of the day still radiates softly from the earth, rising up through the soles of leather boots, carrying with it the rich, damp scent of pine needles, wild grass, and river moss. Along a river that winds through the ancient woods, the water flows with a quiet, steady murmur. It acts as a mirror to the rising moon, catching silver ribbons of light on its gentle ripples. On one side of this river, the trees lean forward, their branches heavy with summer leaves. On the other side, the exact same trees mirror the posture, their roots drinking from the exact same soil. To the earth, to the water, to the owl softly calling in the canopy, there is no border here. There is only the forest. But beneath the canopy, hidden in the shadows of the ancient pines, thousands of young men are settling down for the night. Let us step softly into one of these encampments, on the western bank. The air here smells faintly of canvas, wood smoke, and the sweet, dark aroma of pipe tobacco. Most of the men are already asleep, wrapped in their blankets, their breathing rising and falling in a slow, collective rhythm that feels almost like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Under the dim, amber glow of a single shaded lantern, a young man sits awake. He has found a flat piece of wood to use as a makeshift desk across his knees. In his hand, a fountain pen scratches softly against a piece of thin, crinkled paper. He writes slowly, deliberately, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He is careful not to press too hard, afraid the ink might bleed through or the fragile paper might tear. He is writing to his mother. He does not write about the enormous, sleeping machines of steel hidden under camouflage nets nearby, nor does he mention the strange, unspoken tension that has settled over the officers in the past few days. Instead, he writes about the weather. He tells her how warm the breeze is, and how it reminds him of the summers back in their village, when the linden trees would bloom. He asks if his younger brother has finished repairing the old bicycle. He pours his love into the simple, mundane details of home, anchoring his heart to a place far away from this strange, quiet forest. He folds the letter carefully, tucking it into his tunic pocket next to his heart, hoping to find a mail carrier in the morning. He blows out the lantern, lies back, and watches the stars through a gap in the trees, feeling small, and tired, and incredibly human. Across the water, on the eastern bank, the night is just as still. The crickets are singing their endless, rhythmic lullaby. Here, in a small, sleeping village near the border, the scent of the air is slightly different. It smells of baked black bread, of damp soil turned by the plow, and of wood ash from the kitchen stoves that have been left to cool. A young border guard leans against the rough bark of a white birch tree. The wood feels cool and solid against his back. He is supposed to be watching the river, but the water is so peaceful, and the night is so incredibly soft, that his eyelids grow heavy. He pulls his coat a little tighter around his shoulders as a gentle breeze rustles the leaves above him. He thinks of the girl he danced with at the village festival just a few weeks ago. He remembers the sound of the accordion, the laughter, the way the lantern light caught the color of her hair. He has a small, faded photograph of her tucked inside his cap. He takes it out for a moment, running his thumb softly over the worn edge of the paper. In this deep, tranquil night, war feels like an impossible ghost story, a rumor that belongs to another world entirely. Here, there is only the quiet river, the singing crickets, and the comforting promise of the morning sun. It is in these incredibly fragile, fleeting moments, in the folding of a letter, in the touching of a photograph, in the quiet sigh of a sleeping boy, that the true heart of history beats. We so often remember the grand, sweeping storms, but we forget the quiet breaths that were taken just before the wind changed. Finding these quiet moments, rescuing these deeply personal stories from the vast ocean of the past, takes a profound amount of time, care, and dedication. It is a labor of love to sift through the forgotten letters and the silent memories. If you find peace and value in these gentle journeys into the past, I would be so deeply grateful if you might consider leaving a small tip on my Ko-Fi page, even just $1, to help support the massive research that goes into keeping these human stories alive. It truly means the world to me. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Thank you, truly, for listening and for caring about these forgotten souls. As the night deepens, the forest settles into a profound slumber. The moon climbs higher, casting long, silvery shadows across the grassy fields. In the barns and stables dotted along the countryside, the animals sleep. Horses stand with their heads bowed, shifting their weight gently from time to time, their sides expanding and contracting in slow, even breaths. They do not know the insignias painted on the sides of the wagons they pull. They only know the comfort of resting their tired legs, the taste of hay, and the soothing stillness of the dark. Sleep is a beautiful, leveling force. In these few, precious hours of darkness, all the lines drawn on the maps dissolve. The uniforms lose their color in the moonlight. The men lying on the earth are no longer soldiers of opposing sides. They are simply young men, exhausted by the marching, longing for their families, and surrendering to the heavy, peaceful embrace of dreams. Some dream of their mothers' kitchens. Some dream of open fields of wheat. Some twitch in their sleep, chasing memories of a childhood that suddenly feels lifetimes away. The wind softly moves through the tall grass, making a sound like a long, gentle shush. It sweeps over the hidden encampments, over the silent cannons, over the sleeping villages. It carries no malice, no warning. It simply cools the warm earth. If you were a bird sitting high in the branches of the ancient oaks, looking down at the world, you would see nothing but peace. You would see a vast, breathing tapestry of life resting under a blanket of stars. You would see millions of individual souls, each with their own fears, their own hopes, and their own quiet loves, all suspended together in this delicate, fragile twilight. The hours stretch out, slow and lazy. The stars begin their incredibly slow, imperceptible slide toward the western horizon. The night is so deep and so quiet that one can almost hear the dew forming on the blades of grass, tiny, perfect droplets of water gathering out of the cool air, resting on the green leaves like scattered diamonds. There is a moment, just in the deepest part of the night, when everything seems to hold its breath. The owls stop their calling. The wind dies down to a mere whisper. It is the absolute peak of the silence, a profound and innocent stillness. The young men on both sides of the river sleep on, their chests rising and falling, entirely unaware of the dawn that is waiting just beyond the curve of the earth. They rest in the gentle, unbroken quiet, safe for just a little while longer in the soft, forgiving arms of the night. The pale light of dawn always brings a promise, but on this morning, the promise was something no one could have ever imagined. Slowly, tenderly, the deep purple bruise of the night begins to fade into a soft, powdery gray. The stars, which had kept such careful watch over the sleeping forests and silent rivers, gently blink out, one by one, surrendering the sky to the approaching sun. The air is incredibly cool and still, carrying the crisp, clean scent of damp earth and resting leaves. Across the vast, rolling plains, a heavy dew has settled during the night. It coats every single blade of grass in a delicate sheen of silver. If you were to walk through the meadows right now, the cold moisture would soak through the leather of your boots, and you would leave a dark, trailing path of footprints in the shimmering white fields. It is the kind of pristine, untouched morning that feels like the very first day of the world. In a small farming village, nestled beside a winding dirt road, the day begins just as it has for countless generations. An old man, his hands withered and lined like the bark of an oak tree, steps out onto his wooden porch. He takes a deep, slow breath of the morning air, pulling the coolness into his lungs. He hears the soft, familiar sounds of his world waking up. Somewhere nearby, a rooster offers a lazy crow. From inside his small home, he can hear the comforting crackle of dry kindling catching fire in the iron stove, and he can smell the rich, earthy aroma of chicory coffee brewing. His wife is inside, her hands wrapped around a warm, ceramic mug, watching the pale light filter through the simple lace curtains. She is thinking about the garden, wondering if the tomatoes need tying, or if the summer heat will be too much for the delicate greens. It is a quiet, beautifully ordinary morning, filled with the simple, domestic thoughts that anchor a life. But then, a strange sound begins to weave itself into the morning breeze. At first, the old man on the porch thinks it is the wind moving through the tall pines. It is a low, persistent vibration, a hum that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. He tilts his head, listening. The vibration grows, ever so slightly, shifting from a whisper to a deep, resonant thrum that he can almost feel in his chest. It sounds like a hive of a million bees waking from a long slumber, or the distant, rolling rumble of thunder from a storm that has not yet gathered clouds. He steps down from his porch, his heavy boots pressing into the wet grass, leaving those first solitary footprints in the dew. He looks up at the sky. The gray has given way to a beautiful, soft pink, spreading like watercolors across the horizon. But there, emerging from the pale light, are tiny, dark specks. At first glance, they look like flocks of migratory birds, flying in perfect, rigid formations. But they are moving too fast, and their wings do not beat. They are unblinking, unyielding silhouettes against the tender morning sky. In a cockpit high above the earth, a young pilot sits wrapped in heavy leather and wool. The air up here is freezing, a sharp contrast to the warm summer earth far below. His hands are steady on the controls, but his heart beats with a frantic, fluttering rhythm, like a trapped bird against his ribs. The vibration of the engine rattles through his bones. He looks down through the glass, down at the vast, beautiful patchwork of green fields, winding silver rivers, and tiny, sleeping villages. From this height, the world looks so incredibly peaceful. There are no borders visible from the clouds. There are no lines drawn in the soil. He reaches into his heavy coat pocket with one gloved hand and touches a small, smooth wooden horse his little sister carved for him before he left. He rubs his thumb over the wood, seeking a connection to something familiar, something gentle, in this vast and terrifyingly loud sky. He does not feel like a conqueror in this moment. He feels incredibly small, swept up in a massive, mechanical current that he cannot control, flying over homes where people are just waking up to boil water for tea. Down below, the young border guard who had fallen asleep against the birch tree is jolted awake by the overwhelming drone. He stands up, brushing the dirt from his coat, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. The sky above him is no longer just sky, it is a ceiling of metal and shadow. The sheer number of wings passing overhead blocks out the rising sun, casting long, eerie shadows across the river. The leaves on the birch tree tremble, not from the wind, but from the raw, acoustic power of the engines. He stands frozen, a single, solitary figure in the tall grass, watching the horizon change forever. There is no anger in him yet, no battle cries, no sudden rush to arms. There is only a profound, surreal disbelief. He watches the shadows slide over the water, over the trees, and toward the interior of his homeland, moving like a dark, unstoppable tide. The sheer scale of what was unfolding in the skies and on the ground that morning is almost too vast for the human mind to fully hold. Thousands of wings, millions of men, a landscape completely transformed in the blink of an eye. It can be difficult to picture the breathtaking, overwhelming size of the armadas that shaped these young lives. If you ever find yourself wanting to visualize the immense machines and the staggering reality of this era, there is a powerful way to do so. I highly recommend watching the film Midway on Amazon Prime or exploring their vast collection of visual history books and memorabilia. It helps give a face and a shape to the staggering scale of those skies, making the history feel real and tangible. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. As the endless formations continue to pass over the old farmer's village, his neighbors begin to step out of their doorways. A mother pulls a knitted shawl tightly around her shoulders, holding her young daughter's hand. They stand in their front yards, their faces tilted upward, bathed in the strange, shifting shadows. Nobody speaks. The sound of the engines is so loud now that it swallows any words they might try to say. But if you look closely at their faces, you do not see the grand, sweeping narratives of history books. You see a mother wondering if the local school will still open today. You see a farmer worrying about his crops in the fields. You see ordinary people desperately trying to fit this unimaginable sight into the small, familiar frames of their everyday lives. Eventually, the massive flock of shadows passes. The drone of the engine slowly fades back into a distant, thrumming whisper, and then, finally, melts away into the horizon. The silence that rushes back in to fill the void is heavy, thick, and deeply unsettling. The birds do not resume their singing. The rooster does not crow again. The sun finally crests the horizon, casting a brilliant, golden light across the landscape. The dew on the grass begins to warm, the silver turning to gold, before slowly evaporating into the morning air. But the dew that has been disturbed, the places where the farmer walked to the edge of his porch, where the border guard stumbled forward in the grass, those footprints remain, dark and pressed deeply into the soil. They are the first quiet marks of a new era. The peaceful world of yesterday, the world of unspoken letters and quiet riverbanks, has quietly slipped away. In its place lies a long, dusty road, stretching out toward an uncertain horizon. And as the morning fully breaks, millions of young men, both on the ground and in the sky, take a deep breath of the warming air, and take their first, hesitant footsteps into the great, sweeping unknown. There is a kind of dust that does not just settle upon your clothes, but weaves itself into the very fabric of your memories. Imagine a road. It is not a paved street like the ones you might know, neat and bordered by quiet sidewalks. It is a river of dry, pale earth, carving its way through a landscape so vast and wide that the horizon seems to gently curve under the weight of the endless summer sky. The sun hangs high above, a pale golden coin burning through a hazy canopy of heat. The air here does not move. It is heavy, thick, and profoundly still. And yet, the road is alive. It is alive with the slow, rhythmic shuffle of thousands upon thousands of heavy leather boots. The men who wear these boots are incredibly tired. They have been walking for days, perhaps weeks, under this relentless, unblinking sun. With every single step they take, the dry earth rises up to meet them, puffing into the air like flour, clinging to their damp skin, turning their dark uniforms into a ghostly, uniform gray. Let us walk beside them for a moment. Listen to the sound of the march. It is not the crisp, sharp sound of a parade ground. It is a slow, hypnotic crunching. A dragging of heels. The creak of leather straps pulled tight across aching shoulders. The rhythmic clinking of a tin canteen against a canvas haversack. The men do not speak much. It takes too much energy to talk, and the dust immediately coats the back of your throat the moment you open your mouth. Look at the young man marching on the outside of the column. His face is a mask of pale dirt, but sweat has carved two clean, narrow rivers down his cheeks. He keeps his eyes fixed on the back of the man in front of him, watching the hypnotic sway of a rolled-up blanket. It is easier to look at the blanket than to look at the horizon. The horizon here is terrifying in its endlessness. In his homeland, there was always a church spire, a familiar hill, or a line of familiar trees to break the distance. But here, the golden fields of the steppe just roll on forever, swallowing distance, swallowing time. He reaches into his pocket, his fingers brushing against a small, folded piece of paper. It is a letter from his wife, received what feels like a lifetime ago. The edges are soft and worn from being touched so many times. He does not need to unfold it, he knows the words by heart. She wrote about the heavy summer rain back home, about how the garden was growing, and how much the dog missed sleeping by his chair. He holds onto the thought of that cool summer rain. He pictures the wet, dark soil of his garden, imagining the smell of it, letting the memory serve as a quiet, private oasis in the middle of this vast, dry ocean of dust. A few miles down the road, moving in the opposite direction, the scene mirrors this quiet exhaustion. Here, there are men walking backward into their own vast country. They are defenders, retreating from a storm they cannot fully understand. They are just as tired, just as coated in the pale, clinging dust. They walk past wooden farmhouses they swore they would protect, past fields of unharvested wheat that bow their heavy heads in the still air. Among them is an older soldier, a man who has seen the harshness of the world before. He notices a younger boy stumbling beside him, dragging a rifle that suddenly looks far too large for his slender frame. The boy's lips are cracked, his eyes vacant, staring blankly at the dirt road. The older man does not offer grand words of encouragement. There is no room for speeches here. Instead, he simply reaches out, gently takes the boy by the elbow to steady him, and unhooks his own canteen. He hands it over without a word. There is perhaps only a mouthful of warm, metallic-tasting water left inside, but the boy takes it with a look of profound, quiet gratitude. For a fleeting second, in the middle of this immense, sweeping tragedy, there is a tiny, beautiful spark of pure humanity. A shared drop of water. A gentle hand on a tired shoulder. It is these small, silent acts of grace that carry men through the unimaginable. When we strip away the grand, sweeping maps and the loud thunder of history, we are left with these intimate, quiet human threads. The shared exhaustion, the silent fears, the deep, aching longing for a cool drink of water and the safety of home. Finding these raw, unpolished moments, and understanding the true, unblurred reality of what these people endured, is a journey that connects us all. If you find comfort in uncovering these hidden truths, and if you wish to dive even deeper into the unfiltered human side of the past, I would love to invite you to join our Patreon community. There, I share free podcasts, raw and unblurred historical insights, and we have a wonderful tip jar to help support the immense research that goes into these stories. It is a quiet corner of the world where history lovers can gather and reflect. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Thank you for walking this road with me. As the afternoon stretches out, the heat begins to bake the landscape into a golden haze. The columns of marching men pass through tiny, isolated villages. The houses are made of dark, withered wood, their roofs thatched with dried straw. Wooden fences lean gently toward the road, as if tired from standing for so many years. Behind these fences, the local people stand and watch. Older women in headscarves, their faces deeply lined by years of sun and wind, lean on wooden gates. Young children peek out from behind their mothers' long skirts, their eyes wide with quiet curiosity. They watch the endless river of dusty men flow past their homes. There is no shouting. There are no grand displays of hostility or joy. There is only a profound, heavy silence, broken only by the crunching of boots and the creaking of wooden wagon wheels. A young soldier in the marching column meets the eyes of an old woman leaning against her fence. He is so tired, and she looks so much like his own grandmother. For a brief, suspended second, their eyes lock. In that look, there is no war. There are no sides. There is only a mutual recognition of shared sorrow. She sees a boy far from his mother, covered in dirt and exhausted to his very bones. He sees an old woman watching her quiet world turn upside down. The soldier offers a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of his head. The old woman slowly lowers her eyes. The column moves on, the moment swallowed back up by the dust. The dust settles on everything. It coats the coats of the weary horses, pulling the heavy supply wagons. The animals walk with their heads bowed low, their tails swishing lazily at the flies. Even the horses seem to understand the solemn, endless nature of this journey. They pull with a steady, quiet resilience, asking for nothing but a handful of oats and a moment to rest. Slowly, mercifully, the sun begins its long descent. The blinding white light of the afternoon softens, melting into rich, warm shades of honey and amber. The shadows of the marching men stretch out long and thin across the fields, making them look like incredibly tall, slender giants walking across the earth. The heat of the day finally begins to break. A tiny, gentle breeze sweeps across the steppe, whispering through the tall grass and rustling the dry leaves of the scattered birch trees. It is a cooling breath, a sigh of relief from the baked earth. The dust that has been kicked up into the air catches the golden light of the setting sun, turning the atmosphere into a beautiful, glowing haze. It is almost poetic, how something as simple and harsh as dust can be transformed into a curtain of shimmering gold. Orders are quietly passed down the line. The march finally slows. The men turn off the broken road, stepping into the soft grass of a nearby meadow. They shrug off their heavy packs, the canvas hitting the earth with a soft, muted thud. Some men simply collapse onto their backs, staring straight up at the darkening sky, too tired to even unlace their boots. Others gather in small, quiet groups, breaking out hard rations and sharing the last of their tobacco. The young soldier from earlier sits against the trunk of a solitary tree. He takes off his cap, running a dirty hand through his hair. He pulls out the letter from his wife one more time. In the fading, gentle light of the evening, he reads the words about the summer rain. And as the first, tiny silver stars begin to prick through the velvety twilight, he finally allows his eyes to close. The road is broken, and the journey is far from over. But for tonight, the marching has stopped. The dust slowly settles back onto the earth, covering the footprints, covering the tracks, blanketing the resting men in a soft, quiet embrace. The vast landscape breathes out a long, slow sigh, wrapping its enormous, peaceful arms around the sleeping soldiers, offering them the simple, profound mercy of a quiet, dreamless night. There is a profound, echoing silence that lingers in a place just after the people have hurried away. Let us walk quietly into a small clearing in the dense, ancient birch woods. The morning mist still clings to the silvery bark of the trees, softening the edges of the world and making the air feel cool and damp against the skin. Just hours ago, this space was filled with the low hum of voices, the clinking of tin mugs, and the soft, heavy thud of resting bodies. Now, there is only the gentle sigh of the wind passing through the high canopy. When men are asked to move quickly, to march toward an uncertain horizon before the sun has fully risen, they must leave pieces of themselves behind. The weight of a rucksack is not just measured in wool and iron, it is measured in the exhaustion of the one carrying it. Eventually, the burdens become too heavy, and decisions are made in the hazy, confusing twilight of early dawn. Step softly over the crushed, dew-soaked grass. Here, the earth still holds the faint, sweet scent of a dying wood fire. The ashes are gray and soft, with a tiny, fading ember glowing weakly in the center, like a sleepy, golden eye. All around this small circle of warmth are the quiet remnants of a sudden departure. Near the base of an old, moss-covered stump, a small canvas pack has been left behind, its straps unbuckled. Beside it lies a scattering of personal things. A broken comb. A small, tin mirror that catches a pale sliver of morning sunlight. And there, resting gently against a patch of dark green moss, is a piece of paper. The edges of the paper are slightly crinkled from the damp air. It is a letter, written in the beautiful, careful, slanted handwriting of a young man who was trying his best to keep his hand steady. The ink is a soft, faded blue. We do not need to know the language to feel the rhythm of the words upon the page. It begins with a tender greeting, a soft, familiar name meant only for the eyes of someone sitting in a kitchen hundreds of miles away. Imagine the young boy sitting right here, leaning against this very stump as the sun sank below the trees last night. He was trying to find the words to explain the immense, overwhelming vastness of the sky here. He wanted to tell his mother about the strange birds he saw, or how the bread they were given tasted just a little bit like the dust of the road. He wanted to reassure her that he was wearing his thick socks, and that he was keeping his head down. But halfway down the page, the ink trails off. The sentence remains suspended, floating in time forever. Perhaps a quiet whistle blew through the camp. Perhaps a shadow moved in the distance, or the distant, low rumble of the horizon told him it was time to pack up and keep walking. He placed the letter down, meaning to finish it just as soon as he had a moment of peace. But peace is a rare and fleeting bird in this vast landscape, and he had to walk away, leaving his thoughts resting softly on the forest floor. Tucked beneath the corner of the unfinished page is a delicate, breathtaking little treasure. It is a single, pale yellow wildflower, carefully pressed flat. Its petals are paper-thin and fragile. He must have plucked it from the edge of a meadow the day before, carrying it in his palm to send a tiny, beautiful piece of this strange world back to the girl he loved. Now, it rests in the quiet woods, a tiny, silent monument to a severed tether between two hearts. Later that same morning, another young man, wearing a different uniform, covered in the same pale dust of the broken roads, walks slowly into this very clearing. He is so incredibly tired. His shoulders slump, and his eyes are heavy with the lack of sleep. He stops near the old stump and looks down. He sees the broken comb. He sees the little mirror. He kneels down in the damp grass, the leather of his boots creaking softly in the quiet air. He reaches out with a dirt-stained hand and gently picks up the unfinished letter and the fragile yellow flower. He does not know the boy who slept here. He does not know the name written at the top of the page. But in this quiet, solitary moment, underneath the canopy of the whispering birch trees, he knows exactly what he is holding. He recognizes the universal shape of homesickness. He holds the flower in his palm and realizes, with a soft, aching pang in his chest, that the stranger who sat here just hours ago misses someone just as fiercely as he misses his own family. He does not tear the paper. He does not crush the flower. Instead, with a quiet, beautiful reverence, he places the letter back onto the moss. He sets the yellow flower gently on top, and then, he finds a smooth, round pebble and places it carefully over the paper, so the wind will not carry it away. It is a silent act of grace, a fleeting moment of deep humanity shared between two tired souls who will never meet, yet who perfectly understand each other's unspoken sorrow. It is in these raw, deeply private moments, left behind in the dirt and the shadows, that the true, unvarnished face of this journey is revealed. So much of what was experienced in these endless forests and dusty roads was too harsh, too stark, and too intimate for the polished history books. The real story is often found in the things left unseen. If you wish to understand the unfiltered reality of what these men walked through, I have put together a collection on Gumroad featuring unseen, raw images and videos of the war that are too restricted to show on this platform. It is a profound window into the unblurred, incredibly human realities of the past. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Let us leave the clearing, leaving the letter safely under its stone, and follow the gentle morning breeze out into the vast, open steppe. The unset letters are everywhere across this enormous landscape, if you know where to look. They are folded into the pockets of heavy, discarded woolen coats lying by the sides of muddy paths. They are hidden beneath the loose floorboards of abandoned wooden farmhouses, where a soldier might have hidden his private thoughts, hoping to return for them one day. They flutter like lost white birds in the tall, dry grass of the meadows. Think of the mothers, the fathers, the wives, and the sweethearts sitting by their windows in quiet towns and villages so incredibly far away. They watch the road, waiting for the postman to walk down their lane. They keep the kettle warm on the stove. They leave a lamp burning in the window at night. They do not know that the comforting words they are so desperately longing for are resting in the damp earth of a foreign field. Here is another letter, resting on the wooden sill of a broken window in a tiny, empty village. This one is barely a few lines long, scribbled hastily on the back of a ration wrapper. It simply says, "The sun is very hot today, and the fields are so wide, but they do not look like home. Tell my little brother I still have the carved wooden horse he gave me." Such simple words. Such quiet, everyday thoughts. But they carry the immense, heartbreaking weight of a soul trying to anchor itself in a world that is spinning entirely out of control. These letters are the fragile, invisible threads that tie the terrifying vastness of the front back to the warm, safe glow of a kitchen hearth. They are small, whispered prayers of normality in a world that has forgotten what normal is. As the afternoon slowly bleeds into evening, the golden light returns, stretching long, lazy shadows across the plains. The air cools, and the tall grass begins to sway in a soft, rhythmic dance. Let us imagine, just for a moment, that the gentle wind moving across the steppe becomes a messenger. As it sweeps through the abandoned camps and the silent villages, it gathers up the essence of all those unread lines. It carries the love, the deep, quiet fears, and the enduring resilience of a million young men, lifting them up into the beautiful, darkening sky. Close your eyes and listen to the incredibly soft rustle of the leaves. It does not speak of the grand, sweeping tragedies of history. It simply whispers the familiar names of the loved ones left behind. It whispers of summer rain, of shared laughter, of promises to return for the harvest. The letters left unsent may never reach the loving hands they were meant for. The ink may fade into the paper, and the paper may eventually melt back into the earth. But in the quiet, undisturbed spaces of this vast landscape, their deeply human echoes will always remain. They are resting peacefully now, untouched by the noise and the storm, forever held in the tender, forgiving embrace of the waiting earth, under a soft and eternal blanket of stars. There is a quiet heartbreak in watching the earth yield its golden treasures, only to realize you must return them all to ashes. Late summer in the vast, open plains is usually a time of profound, quiet joy. The sun hangs heavy and warm in the sky, baking the rich soil and turning the endless fields of wheat into oceans of shimmering gold. When the late afternoon breeze sweeps across the landscape, it ripples through the heavy grain with a soft, soothing shush. It is a beautiful, rhythmic sound, like a lullaby the earth sings to itself to celebrate the end of a long growing season. For generations, this golden landscape meant life. It meant fresh, warm bread on the wooden table, warmth in the deep winter, and the comforting, unyielding certainty of the changing seasons. Imagine a farmer standing quietly at the edge of his field. His hands are rough, deeply lined and cracked from decades of tending to this exact patch of soil. He knows every subtle dip and gentle rise of this land. He knows the rich, damp smell of it after a sudden spring rain, and the dusty, sweet scent of it now, right before the harvest. His grandfather guided a horse-drawn plow through this very dirt. His own children learned to walk by tumbling laughing into the soft, sun-warmed furrows. This field is not just dirt and stalks to him, it is a member of his family. It is the living, breathing heart of everything he knows. But today, the harvest will not be gathered into wooden carts. The heavy, beautiful heads of wheat will not be ground into fine flour to feed his neighbors. There is a different kind of wind blowing across the steppe now, carrying the faint, metallic scent of an approaching storm. The order has come, not spoken with loud shouts or grand speeches, but passed quietly, softly, from neighbor to neighbor. A heavy, unspoken sorrow has settled over the small village. Leave nothing behind. Deny them the earth. It is a sacrifice so immense, so deeply unnatural to a man who has spent his entire life nurturing growth from the ground, that his mind struggles to simply hold the thought. How do you destroy the very thing you were born to protect? As the afternoon sun begins to dip low, painting the endless sky in soft, bruised shades of peach and lavender, the farmer's family walks out into the field together. No one speaks. There are no words heavy enough, no sentences long enough, for this deeply private moment. His wife holds a small, woven basket, not to collect the life-giving grain, but to carry the damp woolen rags they will use to safely tend to the edges of the destruction. His young son holds his hand, looking up at his father's quiet, solemn face. The boy doesn't fully understand the grand, sweeping strategies of nations or armies. He only knows that the air feels heavy, and he feels a deep, aching sadness radiating from his father's gentle grip. The farmer kneels in the dry dirt. The knees of his worn trousers sink into the dust. He takes a single, heavy stalk of wheat between his calloused fingers, brushing his thumb over the rough grains one last, lingering time. It is a silent, deeply private apology to the earth. Then, with a slow, remarkably steady hand, he strikes a match. The flame is small, a pale, flickering orange star in the dying daylight. He lowers it gently to the dry husks at the base of the stalks. It catches with a soft, surprisingly gentle crackle. At first, it is just a tiny, delicate ribbon of gray smoke, curling up into the still air like incense in a quiet church. But the summer has been incredibly hot, and the crop is perfectly dry. The flame begins to spread, whispering from stalk to stalk. It creates a beautiful, terrible wave of amber light moving gracefully across the gold. The sound of a burning wheat field is not a violent roar. It is 1,000 tiny, delicate pops and snaps, sounding very much like a gentle, warm rain falling softly on a tin roof. The family steps back, the sudden heat warming their faces against the evening chill. They stand shoulder to shoulder, a silent portrait of profound resilience, watching their livelihood dissolve into the evening sky. The smoke rises thick and white, mingling with the encroaching twilight mist. It drifts over the quiet, thatched roof villages, over the empty wooden barns and the silent, deep stone wells. It forms a heavy blanket of sorrow, woven entirely from the sheer willpower of ordinary people making an impossible choice. As the sun finally disappears below the horizon, the thick smoke blows from beneath, illuminated by the creeping, dancing lines of fire. The air smells sweet and deeply roasted, the scent of toasted grain and warm ash. It is the perfume of a quiet, unyielding defiance. These immense acts of sacrifice, these silent, heartbreaking moments of burning the world to save it, created a thick, literal and metaphorical fog over the landscape. So much was hidden within that smoke. For every burned field and abandoned village, there were quiet, unseen operations happening in the shadows, secret movements, hidden messages, and covert acts of resistance that were never meant to be written in the official, brightly lit pages of history. It takes a deep, gentle unearthing to blow away the ash of time and find the hidden truths of these secret wars. If you find yourself drawn to these hidden corners of the past, and want to learn about the unseen events that quietly shaped this era beneath the surface, I would love to share something special with you. I have put together a free ebook called The Shadow War, 5 Top Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. When you sign up for my free weekly email newsletter, I will send it right to your inbox, and we can explore these forgotten, shadowy deep dives together. It is a wonderful way to uncover the quiet secrets of history. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. By midnight, the tall, dancing flames have softly died down. The grand, shimmering ocean of wheat is gone. In its place is a vast, dark expanse of scorched earth, smelling of charcoal and memory. But the darkness is not entirely empty. Across the miles of blackened soil, millions of tiny, glowing red embers remain scattered in the dust. They pulse softly in the cool night breeze, breathing in and out with the wind, looking exactly like a beautiful, fallen reflection of the starry night sky above. The farmer and his family have already packed their small, wooden horse cart. They have taken only what they can carry: a few heavy wool blankets, a cast-iron cooking pot, a worn family Bible with dried flowers pressed between the pages, and the heavy, silent weight of their memories. The wooden wheels creak softly, a rhythmic, lulling sound, as they turn their backs on the glowing field and begin to walk down the dusty road. They join the long, quiet river of people moving slowly, steadily, away from the approaching horizon. The old farmer does not look back over his shoulder. He keeps his eyes on the dusty road ahead. He knows, deep in his bones, that the soft ashes left behind will eventually nourish the soil. He knows that the earth is infinitely patient, and that one day, long after the loud metal machines have rusted away and the broken roads have healed, the tiny, fragile green shoots will push through the black crust once again. He carries that quiet, unshakable faith in his heart, a seed of hope safely tucked away from the fire. The night wraps its dark, cool arms around the empty, smoking landscape. The embers slowly, gently wink out, one by one, surrendering to the cold, damp dew of the early morning. The wind settles into a soft, murmuring breath, resting after the long day. The harvest of embers is complete, leaving behind a profound, heavy, and beautiful stillness. Close your eyes, and let the quiet strength of those who walked away carry you gently into peace. They gave everything they had to the fire, but they kept the most important thing of all, the quiet, enduring spark of their own humanity, glowing softly and safely in the dark. There is a gentle, heavy sorrow in the way the autumn rain finally decides to fall, as if the sky itself can no longer hold back its tears. As the long, blistering heat of the summer begins to fade, the vast canvas of the sky changes. The brilliant, punishing blues and the golden haze of August slowly surrender to an endless, unbroken canopy of soft, bruised gray. The clouds do not roll in with the loud, dramatic crash of thunder. Instead, they gather quietly, lowering themselves over the immense plains like a heavy woolen blanket, sealing the world inside a cool, misty twilight. And then, the rain begins. It starts as a delicate whisper against the dry, pale dust of the broken roads. A single drop. Then another. They leave dark, perfect little circles in the earth, releasing that rich, beautiful scent of petrichor, the smell of thirsty soil finally drinking in the sky. If you listen closely, the sound of this first rain is almost musical. It is a soft, rhythmic patter against the canvas of weary tints, a gentle tapping against the rim of a tin cup, a hushed rustle as it washes over the weary, bowing heads of the autumn trees. But this rain does not stop. It falls for hours, and then for days, and then for weeks. It is a slow, methodical, unyielding weep. Slowly, beneath this constant downpour, the earth itself begins to change. The solid ground, the roads that carried the heavy footsteps of millions, begin to soften. They surrender to the water, turning into a deep, endless ocean of dark, heavy clay. In the local language, there is a word for this season. Rasputitsa. The time without roads. Let us stand beside one of these roads now, watching the world slow down to an agonizing, heavy crawl. Imagine trying to walk through a dream where your legs suddenly feel like they are made of lead. With every single step, the deep, sticky mud reaches up to grab the soles of heavy leather boots. It pulls back with a powerful, greedy suction, demanding an enormous, exhausting effort just to lift a foot and place it down again. The mud coats everything. It climbs up the ankles, up the knees, turning every man into a heavy, gray statue molded from the earth itself. The grand, terrifying machines of steel, the ones that roared so loudly across the summer fields, are suddenly rendered entirely helpless. Their massive tracks spin uselessly, sinking deeper and deeper into the quiet, swallowing embrace of the clay. They sit silently on the sides of the roads like exhausted iron giants, defeated not by armies, but by the simple, quiet persistence of wet soil. In this sprawling, gray ocean of mud, the world belongs once again to the soft, breathing creatures. It belongs to the men, and it belongs to the horses. Look through the gentle mist, and you will see a young soldier walking slowly beside a massive draft horse. The animal's head is bowed incredibly low, the rain dripping steadily from its dark, heavy mane. Its chest heaves with slow, white puffs of warm breath that vanish into the chilly autumn air. The wagon behind them is buried to its wooden axles in the earth, completely immovable. The young soldier does not strike the horse. He does not yell. He is far too tired for anger, and he knows the animal is giving him everything it has. Instead, he steps close to the horse's warm, wet neck. He reaches out with a bare, freezing hand and gently wipes the thick, cold mud from above the animal's large, dark eyes. He leans his forehead against the horse's cheek, right there in the middle of the endless rain, and he whispers to it. He speaks in a soft, soothing tone, calling the horse by the name of the pony he used to ride back on his family's farm, a lifetime ago. In this deeply isolated, gray world, they are no longer a soldier and a supply animal. They are simply two weary souls, leaning on each other for warmth, finding a tiny moment of grace in the depths of the autumn mud. It is these quiet, hidden moments, a whispered word to a tired horse, a gentle hand wiping away the rain, that remind us of the enduring beauty of the human heart, even in the darkest of storms. Unearthing these deeply personal stories, washing away the heavy mud of time to find the beating hearts beneath, is a profound labor of love. It requires sifting through countless forgotten diaries and faded memories to keep these gentle echoes alive. If you find comfort in these quiet journeys and wish to help support the massive research and time it takes to craft these stories, I would be so deeply honored if you might consider leaving a small tip on my Ko-Fi page, even just $1. It truly helps keep this history breathing. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for walking through this rain with me. As the daylight slowly drains away, turning the gray sky into a deep, impenetrable charcoal, the need for warmth becomes a quiet, desperate ache. The temperature is dropping, a damp, biting chill that seeps right through the heavy wool coats, settling deep into the bones. At the edge of a flooded field, a group of young men have managed to find the broken, skeletal remains of an old wooden barn. The roof is mostly gone, but a small corner still holds a few rotting planks, offering a tiny square of sanctuary from the weeping sky. They huddle together beneath it, sitting on their damp rucksacks to keep them off the wet earth. They press their shoulders tight against one another, shivering softly, trying to share whatever fragile body heat they have left. Someone manages to light a single, tiny candle. The small, golden flame dances nervously in the damp draft, casting long, soft shadows against the worn, wooden walls. One of the men reaches deep inside his heavy coat, close to his chest where it is driest. He pulls out a letter. The envelope is incredibly battered, the edges soft and blurred from the constant dampness. He handles it as if it were made of the finest spun glass. He does not read it silently to himself. In the gentle, flickering light, surrounded by the rhythmic, heavy breathing of his friends, he unfolds the paper and begins to read aloud. His voice is a low, soothing murmur, barely louder than the rain falling on the broken roof above. The letter is from his mother. She writes about how she has finally harvested the apples from the tree in the back garden. She writes that she has knitted him a thick, new pair of woolen socks, and that they are sitting on the table, waiting to be mailed. And then, she writes the words that bring a profound, silent ache to every man listening in the dark. Please, my darling boy, make sure you stay dry, and keep yourself warm. It is such an impossible request in this ocean of mud and freezing rain. And yet, hearing her words, hearing the simple, Pure love of a mother asking her son to be safe wraps around the huddled men like a warm blanket. For a few precious minutes, the ruined barn fades away. The terrible, endless mud vanishes. They are all, in their minds, sitting in a bright, warm kitchen, smelling the sweet scent of baking apples, held safe and dry in the arms of someone who loves them. The ink on the page is beginning to run, the soft blue words turning into small, beautiful tears upon the paper, joining the tears of the autumn sky outside. The young man carefully folds the letter back up and tucks it away. No one speaks. The silence in the small wooden sanctuary is heavy, reverent, and deeply peaceful. Just a little further down the road, in a small, weathered cottage that leans heavily against the wind, a local village woman sits by her window. The glass is fogged with condensation, blurring the world outside into shapes of gray and deep brown. Her own roof has a small leak, and she has placed a tin bucket on the wooden floorboards to catch the drops. Plink, plink, plink. It is a slow, rhythmic lullaby that she has known every autumn of her long life. She takes a piece of cloth and gently wipes away the fog from the glass, peering out into the twilight. She sees the endless procession of tired, mud-soaked boys slowly passing by her fence. They belong to an army that has crossed her borders, yet when she looks at them, she does not see conquerors. She only sees young men, shivering in the cold, their faces pale and drawn, sinking into the heavy earth of her homeland. She stands up, moving slowly to her small pantry. She takes a woven basket and fills it with 5 small, dirt-covered potatoes, a priceless treasure in these incredibly lean times. She opens her front door, the damp, freezing wind immediately biting at her face, and sets the basket quietly on the edge of her wooden porch, right near the muddy road. She doesn't wait for a thank you. She simply closes the door and goes back to her chair by the window. It is a quiet, anonymous act of profound grace. A mother feeding someone else's hungry children, simply because the sky is weeping, the earth is cold, and they are so incredibly far from home. The night finally settles completely over the vast, flooded plains. The rain continues its soft, hushed, never-ending song. It washes over the forgotten machines. It washes over the quiet, huddled shapes in the broken barns. It turns the landscape into a great, equalizing sea of sleep, wrapping the weary, aching world in a heavy, wet embrace. Breathe in the cool, damp air. Let the rhythmic tapping of the rain soothe your mind. Even in the deepest, thickest mud, when the world feels entirely motionless and completely overwhelmed by the storm, the human spirit continues to beat. It beats in the gentle stroking of a horse's mane, in the soft reading of a mother's letter, and in a quiet basket of potatoes left in the dark. Rest now, beneath the tears of the autumn sky, and know that even the longest, heaviest rains must eventually come to an end. There is a profound, breathless stillness in an ancient forest, where the tall, pale trees seem to listen far more than they speak. As you leave the open plains and step into the deep, quiet expanse of the birch woods, the world instantly changes. The vast, endless sky that once stretched forever above the steppe is suddenly replaced by a high, intricate canopy of fading yellow leaves and intertwined branches. The light here is different. It is soft, filtered, and heavily muted, turning the afternoon into a perpetual, gentle twilight. All around, as far as the eye can see in any direction, stand the birch trees. Their trunks are a striking, ghostly white, peeling in delicate, paper-thin strips that flutter incredibly softly in the slightest breeze. They look like thousands upon thousands of silent, pale sentinels, standing perfectly still, guarding the ancient secrets of the earth. The ground beneath them is entirely covered in a thick, damp carpet of fallen leaves, rich with the deeply calming, earthy scent of wet moss, old wood, and the quiet decay of autumn. When the marching men enter these woods, the noise of their advance simply vanishes. The forest swallows the sound of their heavy boots, absorbing the clinking of their gear into its vast, damp expanse. They are no longer a grand, sweeping force moving across a map. They are suddenly rendered incredibly small, reduced to fragile, solitary wanderers moving through an immense, silent cathedral of wood and shadow. The deeper they walk, the heavier the silence becomes. It is a silence that presses against the ears, a quiet so absolute that a man can hear the steady, rhythmic beating of his own heart. And as the evening begins to fall, painting the spaces between the white trunks with deep, cool shades of indigo and charcoal, a new feeling begins to settle over the resting soldiers. It is not a loud, sudden panic. It is a slow, creeping, delicate awareness. It is the distinct, unshakable feeling that they are not alone. Let us sit quietly beside one of the young boys who has stopped for the night. He has found a small hollow beneath the roots of a giant, fallen oak tree, a tiny sanctuary shielded from the damp wind. He gathers a few handfuls of dry twigs from beneath the thickest bushes, his fingers numb and slow from the biting chill in the air. With a trembling hand, he strikes a match. The tiny, golden flame flares up, casting a warm, fragile circle of light around him. It illuminates his tired, dirt-smudged face, highlighting the deep shadows beneath his eyes. He feeds the fire slowly, carefully, treating each dry leaf and small stick as if it were a priceless treasure. He knows that lighting a fire in these woods is a risk. He knows that the light can be seen from far away through the trees. But the cold seeping into his bones is a much more immediate, pressing ache, and the psychological comfort of that small, glowing light is simply too beautiful to resist. He wraps his heavy coat tighter around his shoulders and stares softly into the dancing flames. And then, he looks up, peering out past the edge of the firelight, into the deep, impenetrable blackness of the trees. He feels the eyes upon him. The forest is alive. It is a living, breathing entity, and it belongs entirely to the people who grew up within its shadows. The young soldier knows this. He knows that somewhere out there, hidden perfectly in the darkness, are the local men and women who have melted into the woods to protect their home. They move without a sound, leaving no footprints on the moss. They are the shadows in the birch woods, watching the strangers who have come to their quiet world. He does not reach for his rifle. He simply sits perfectly still, breathing in the cold air, wrapped in a profound, melancholic isolation. He thinks of his own hometown, surrounded by gentle hills and familiar, friendly trees. He wonders if someone is hiding just 50 yards away, watching him warm his hands, perhaps holding their breath so he will not hear them. He wonders what they look like. Are they a father? A young school teacher? An old woodsman? Let us drift away from the fire for a moment, floating softly into the dark trees, to find the one who is watching. Standing perfectly still behind the pale, thick trunk of a birch tree is a young woman. She wears a heavy, dark woolen shawl wrapped tightly around her head and shoulders, blending seamlessly into the bark and the shadows. She knows every single inch of this forest. As a little girl, she used to run barefoot through these very trees, hunting for wild mushrooms and sweet summer berries. She knows exactly which branches will snap underfoot, and which patches of moss will hold her weight in absolute silence. She holds a rusted hunting rifle close to her chest, her knuckles pale in the moonlight. She watches the young soldier by his fire. She can see the way his shoulders shake from the cold. She can see him pull a small, worn photograph from his pocket, holding it gently toward the firelight to see the faces of his family. In her heart, she carries a fierce, burning love for her home, and a deep, heavy sorrow for what has happened to her village. She knows she is supposed to be a phantom, a shadow meant to strike fear into the hearts of these boys. But as she watches him, bathed in that incredibly fragile, golden light, the lines of the war gently blur. She does not see a conquering invader. In this quiet, suspended moment, she only sees a freezing, terribly lonely boy, thousands of miles from his mother, trying to find a tiny sliver of warmth in a dark and frightening wood. She takes a slow, silent breath. She lowers the barrel of her rifle, just an inch. Not tonight, she thinks to herself. Tonight, the forest will just let him sleep. She takes one completely silent step backward, dissolving back into the mist, leaving nothing but the incredibly soft rustle of a falling leaf. It is exactly in these quiet, unseen spaces, the moments of profound restraint, the silent observations in the dark, the hidden acts of humanity and resistance, that the truest, most compelling stories of this era are found. There was an entire hidden world operating entirely in the shadows, away from the roaring machines and the brightly lit maps. If you find yourself captivated by this quiet, hidden history, and wish to explore the deeply human, unseen moments that happen behind the lines, I would love to invite you to join my free email newsletter. When you do, I will send you a beautifully crafted, free ebook called The Shadow War: 5 Top Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. Each week, we will take a gentle, deep dive into the forgotten facts and the quiet heroism of those who moved in the dark. It is a wonderful way to connect with the incredible, hidden resilience of the past. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. The night deepens, and the birch woods settle into an even more profound, heavy stillness. The young soldier sitting by his fire slowly puts his photograph away. He feels a strange, unexplainable sense of peace wash over him. Perhaps it is just the warmth of the embers, or perhaps, on some deeply instinctual level, he can feel that the shadow watching him has quietly moved away. He pulls a small, leather-bound diary from his pack and a stub of a pencil. He rests the book on his knee. He doesn't write about the fear, or the cold, or the endless marching. Instead, he writes about the trees. He writes, "The birch trees here are incredibly beautiful. They glow in the dark like white candles. It is so quiet tonight. I feel like the forest is holding its breath, just letting us rest for a little while." He closes the diary, his eyes growing incredibly heavy. The tiny fire has burned down to a pile of soft, glowing orange embers, emitting a gentle, steady heat. He curls up tightly on the damp earth, pulling his collar up over his ears, and finally closes his eyes. High above the canopy, the clouds gently part, revealing the bright, silver face of the moon. Its light filters down through the yellow leaves, casting beautiful, intricate patterns of shadow and light across the forest floor. The moonlight touches the face of the sleeping soldier. And, a mile away, deep in the thickest part of the woods, that exact same moonlight touches the face of the young woman in the dark shawl, as she walks quietly back to her hidden camp. They are walking under the same sky, breathing the same cool, damp air, both navigating a world that has grown entirely too vast and complicated for their young shoulders. The forest does not judge them. The ancient birch trees have stood here for centuries. They have seen the snows come and go, they have seen the passing of seasons and the wandering of generations. To the forest, these millions of men and women are just a fleeting moment in a much older, much slower story. The wind softly picks up, moving gently through the upper branches. It creates a sound like a long, soothing sigh, rustling the leaves with a hushed, whispering melody. It is a lullaby for the lost, a song of pure, impartial peace. It wraps around the sleeping boys in their fragile camps, and it wraps around the quiet watchers hidden in the dark. For tonight, there is no storm. There is only the immense, beautiful quiet of the taiga. Let the soft breathing of the woods guide you into rest. Let the shadows lengthen and blur, softening the hard edges of the day. In this deep, ancient stillness, everyone is granted the simple, beautiful mercy of sleep, watched over only by the tall, pale trees and the gentle, silver light of the eternal moon. There is a moment, just before the first true snow falls, when the wind changes its direction, and the earth simply stops breathing. If you were to stand in the middle of the vast, open steppe on this particular twilight, you would feel a profound shift in the very fabric of the world. For weeks, the land has been a weeping, heavy ocean of dark autumn mud. The air has been thick and damp, smelling of wet wool, crushed leaves, and exhaustion. But as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in pale, brittle shades of apricot and bruised violet, a new, completely silent force sweeps across the plains. It is the breath of frost. It arrives not with a roar, but with a deeply quiet, invisible touch. You can feel it first against your cheeks, a sharp, sudden crispness that makes you pull your collar just a little bit higher. Then, you can hear it. The endless, sucking squelch of the mud begins to change. The puddles, which have reflected the gray skies for so long, begin to skim over with delicate, beautiful sheets of translucent ice. By midnight, the soft, forgiving earth has locked itself away. The deeply rutted roads, carved by thousands of heavy wagon wheels and tired boots, harden into solid iron. Walking across this new landscape is like walking across a sea of broken glass. Every footstep echoes with a hollow, unnatural crunch. The world has been frozen perfectly in place, caught mid-stride. Let us step softly into a small encampment at the edge of a tree lane, where the birch leaves have finally withered and blown away, leaving only pale, bare branches scratching at the sky. The young men here are moving slower today. Their summer uniforms, which felt so stiflingly hot just a few months ago in the golden dust, suddenly feel as thin as paper. There is a quiet, unspoken panic fluttering in their chests, a realization that the cold is no longer just a temporary discomfort. It is an ocean they are slowly sinking into. Beside a frozen, unmoving supply cart, a young soldier sits on an overturned wooden crate. He is trying to write a letter home, but the ink inside his fountain pen has frozen completely solid. He holds the cold metal barrel between his bare, trembling palms, breathing his warm breath onto it, trying to coax the liquid back to life. He rubs his hands together, the friction offering a tiny, fleeting comfort. He doesn't want to tell his mother about the ache in his fingers. He wants to tell her about the sky. He finally manages to get a few pale, watery words onto the thin paper. He writes, "The stars here are different now. They don't twinkle like they do over the roof of our house. They look like tiny shards of ice scattered across a black floor. It is very beautiful, but it is very cold." He folds the letter, tucking it deep inside his tunic, right against his heart, hoping his own body heat will keep the paper warm. To fight the bitter chill, he has found an old, discarded newspaper from a village they passed days ago. He carefully unfolds it, smoothing out the Cyrillic letters he cannot read, and layers the fragile sheets of paper inside his thin coat, wrapping them across his chest. It is a desperate, incredibly fragile armor against the wind, but it gives him a tiny illusion of warmth. A few yards away, two men are sharing a guard post. They are standing perfectly still, stamping their feet every few minutes to keep the blood moving. One of them is wearing a pair of wool gloves that have worn completely through at the fingertips. His skin is pale, his knuckles raw and red. His friend, standing beside him, watches him quietly. Without a word, the second soldier pulls off his own gloves, thick, dark wool knitted by his sister before he left. He holds them out in the freezing air. The first soldier shakes his head, an unspoken refusal to take his friend's only source of warmth. But the friend simply smiles, a tired, gentle curving of his cracked lips, and pushes the gloves into the man's chest. "Just for an hour," he whispers, his breath pluming in a thick white cloud between them. "Just until you can feel your fingers again. I will keep my hands in my pockets." It is a remarkably small gesture. A simple exchange of knitted wool. But in the grand, sweeping terror of this frozen landscape, it is an act of profound, deeply human heroism. It is the warmth of the human spirit refusing to let the frost completely take over. They stand together in the dark, watching the pale moon rise over the rigid earth, silently guarding not just the camp, but each other. The visual reality of this new, frozen world is stark and unforgiving. The polished, neat lines of the summer have dissolved completely into a desperate patchwork of survival. Men wrap themselves in whatever they can find, stolen tablecloths, pieces of old carpets, women's shawls found in abandoned farmhouses. They look like a wandering army of ghosts, bundled against the terrible breath of the steppe. Understanding the true, incredibly harsh reality of what these boys looked like and what they had to endure just to survive the dropping temperatures requires looking past the sanitized history books. It is a raw, deeply moving visual truth. To help you truly visualize the unvarnished reality of these quiet, desperate struggles, I have made a special digital collection available on Gumroad. It contains unseen, raw images and rare video footage that capture the profound harshness of this winter, media that is simply too restricted or raw to show on this platform. It bridges the gap between the stories we share and the unblurred faces of the past. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. As midnight approaches, the temperature plummets even further. The air becomes so cold that it hurts to inhale. It feels like breathing in tiny, sharp needles of glass. The moisture from the men's breath freezes against the wool of their collars, leaving them with white, frosty beards. Inside the thin canvas tents, the cold creates something unexpectedly, heartbreakingly beautiful. The warmth of the sleeping bodies inside rises, hitting the freezing canvas ceiling. Slowly, delicately, the condensation turns into frost. It creeps across the fabric in magnificent, intricate patterns. A soldier lies awake, wrapped in two thin blankets, staring up at the roof of the tent. The pale moonlight filters through the canvas, illuminating the ice. It looks exactly like a magical, silver forest of ferns and ivy, blooming silently in the dark. It is nature's cruelest, most beautiful masterpiece, painted with the very breath of the shivering men below. He watches the delicate ice crystals shimmer, his eyes heavy with an exhaustion that goes far deeper than muscle or bone. He thinks of the windows in his childhood bedroom, how the frost used to paint the glass on winter mornings, and how he would trace his name in the ice with his warm fingertips before running downstairs to a crackling fire and the smell of hot porridge. The memory is so incredibly vivid, so warm and safe, that it brings a sudden, soft tear to his eye. The tear escapes, rolling down his temple and into his hair, feeling unnaturally warm against his freezing skin. He tucks his hands deeper into his armpits and curls his knees up to his chest, making himself as small as possible. He listens to the rhythmic, shallow breathing of his friends sleeping beside him. They are all dreaming the exact same dream. They are dreaming of hearth fires, of boiling kettles, of woolen blankets, and of home. Outside, the breath of frost continues its quiet, methodical work. It silences the rivers, turning the flowing water into thick, white ribbons of ice. It hardens the bark of the trees, making them crack and groan softly in the deep night. It covers the abandoned machines, the forgotten helmets, and the miles of endless, empty plains in a delicate, shimmering blanket of white. The world has been put into a deep, forced slumber. The loud, rushing pulse of the autumn has been slowed to a nearly imperceptible, frozen heartbeat. Let the stillness of the ice wash over you. Let the profound, quiet resilience of those who huddle together in the dark bring you a sense of gentle peace. They found warmth not in the world around them, but in the shared, unspoken bonds they carried within. Rest now, safe and warm beneath your own blankets, while the frost paints its silent, beautiful pictures on the cold glass of the past. There is a unique, profound kind of heartache in finally seeing the horizon you have walked thousands of miles to reach, only to find your legs can no longer carry you forward. The winter has fully claimed the world now. The landscape has been transformed into a vast, unbroken ocean of brilliant, blinding white. The sky above is no longer blue, it is a pale, milky gray, heavy with the constant promise of more snow. The wind moving across the flat, open steppe does not rustle leaves or sway tall grass anymore. Instead, it carves the snowdrifts into smooth, beautiful waves, making the earth look like a frozen, completely silent sea. Let us stand together on the crest of one of these gentle, snow-covered rises. The air here is so incredibly cold that it has lost its scent. It is sharp and completely pure, catching in the back of your throat with every breath. A small group of exhausted men has stopped here. They are huddled together, wrapped in a bizarre, chaotic layer of blankets, old carpets, and whatever fabric they could scavenge to keep the freezing wind from their bones. Their faces are wrapped in scarves, leaving only their tired, deeply sunken eyes exposed to the pale daylight. They look less like an army and more like a gathering of lost, wandering souls, slowly dissolving into the white landscape. One of the men, an officer who looks far too young to carry the weight of the men behind him, steps slightly forward. He moves slowly, his heavy boots squeaking softly in the dry, packed snow. With trembling hands, encased in thick, stiff wool gloves, he raises a pair of heavy brass binoculars to his eyes. The metal of the binoculars is bitterly cold. It stings the fragile skin around his eyes. He slowly adjusts the focus, peering through the frosty lenses, trying to cut through the hazy, drifting curtains of blowing snow in the distance. For a long time, there is nothing but white. Just the endless, frozen plain rolling out into the gray sky. But then, for a brief, suspended moment, the wind suddenly drops. The curtain of snow gently parts, pulled back like a veil on a theater stage. And there it is. Far, far in the distance, barely a smudge on the very edge of the horizon, there is a cluster of shapes. And catching the incredibly faint, watery light of the afternoon sun, there is a tiny, unmistakable flash of gold. It is the city. It is the spires and the onion domes of the sprawling capital, rising like a mirage out of the frozen earth. To the young man looking through the glass, it doesn't look like a military target. It looks like a warm, glowing hearth. It looks like the end of the road. Since the incredibly warm, dusty days of June, this city has been the promise whispered to them every single night. Reach the city, they were told, and you can sleep under a real roof. Reach the city, and the marching will end. Reach the city, and you can finally go home. He lowers the binoculars slowly. He doesn't say a word. He just stands there, the wind whipping a fine mist of snow across his boots, staring at that tiny, golden speck. It is only 20 or 30 miles away. In the summer, on a paved road, a young man could walk that distance in a single, long day. He could be there by nightfall. But here, in the deep, clinging snow, with the temperature dropping far below freezing, 20 miles is an ocean. It is a vast, impassable chasm. He turns and looks at his men. They are shivering, leaning on their rifles just to stay upright. Some of them have simply sat down in the snow, too tired to take another step, closing their eyes against the glare. He looks back at the city. It is so close he feels he could reach out and touch it, yet he knows, with a quiet, heavy certainty in his heart, that they will never cross that final stretch of white. The weight of these deeply personal, quiet moments of realization is incredibly heavy. The artifacts that survived this winter, the heavy brass binoculars, the worn leather map cases, the incredibly fragile letters written with freezing ink, carry the physical memory of these long, desperate stares across the snow. To truly grasp the atmosphere of this era, it is beautiful to see these objects, or to turn the pages of a visual history that shows the faces of the people who were there. If you are deeply moved by this history, I highly recommend exploring Amazon for WWII memorabilia or beautiful, comprehensive visual history books. Holding a piece of the past, or seeing the stark, powerful photographs of this winter, helps ground these stories in reality and honors the memory of those who lived it. It is like holding a tiny piece of time in your hands. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. As the officer tucks his cold hands deep into his pockets, let us leave the snowy ridge and travel quietly across those 20 miles of frozen distance, floating like a snowflake on the wind, until we reach the edge of the city itself. Here, the atmosphere is completely different. The city is massive, sprawling, and beautifully quiet. The streets are blanketed in thick, pristine snow, muffling the sounds of the tram cars and the footsteps on the pavement. The grand, ornate buildings stand tall and resolute, their roofs dusted with white, looking like a painting from an old winter fairy tale. On the very outskirts of the suburbs, where the paved roads surrender to the open fields, a long, winding trench has been dug into the frozen earth. It was not dug by soldiers. Look down into the ditch, and you will see a group of ordinary citizens. There is an elderly man, a retired schoolteacher, wearing a heavy, dark overcoat and a fur hat. Beside him is a young woman, perhaps a university student, her cheeks flushed bright red from the cold, a colorful knitted scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. They are holding heavy iron shovels, their breath rising in beautiful, rhythmic clouds of steam. They are exhausted, too. Their hands are blistered, and the ground they are trying to move is as hard as concrete. But there is a different energy here. There is no despair in their movements. There is a deep, quiet, unshakable resolve. They are standing on the edge of their own home. Behind them, just a few miles away, are their warm kitchens, their sleeping children, their favorite armchairs by the stove, and the lives they have beautifully built. They do not look out across the empty expanse with a desire to conquer. They look out with a simple, profound determination to protect the warmth behind them. The young woman pauses, leaning her shovel against the snowy bank. She pulls off her heavy mitten and reaches into her coat pocket, pulling out a small, wrapped piece of dark bread. She breaks it carefully in half, offering one piece to the elderly schoolteacher. He smiles, his eyes crinkling deeply at the corners, and accepts it with a gentle, grateful nod. They stand together in the freezing trench, chewing the coarse, frozen bread in complete silence, watching the exact same horizon that the young officer was looking at through his binoculars. They are all staring into the exact same white expanse. They are all feeling the exact same biting wind. They are all sharing the exact same sky, the exact same snow, and the exact same human desire simply to be warm and to be safe. It is a profound, beautiful, and deeply tragic symmetry. Millions of souls, pinned down by the winter, staring at each other across an invisible, uncrossable line. As the short winter afternoon comes to an end, the pale sun dips below the horizon in a spectacular display of muted colors. The sky turns the color of a faded rose, then deepens into a rich, dusky plum, before finally settling into an endless, velvety indigo. The stars begin to appear, incredibly bright and sharp against the cold dark. They look like tiny shards of diamond scattered across a black velvet cloth. On the snowy ridge, the wandering men curl up together beneath the snow, trying to trap whatever fragile heat their bodies have left. They close their eyes, and the city they saw in the distance becomes nothing more than a ghost, a warm, golden dream that they will chase in their sleep. In the city, the citizens pack up their shovels and walk slowly back to their apartments. They lock their doors, they light their small stoves, and they sit quietly in the dim light, listening to the wind rattle the window panes. The snow begins to fall again. It falls softly, gently, spinning down from the dark sky in large, feathery flakes. It falls on the brass binoculars resting in the snow. It falls on the empty trenches. It falls on the grand, golden spires of the city, and on the quiet, frozen plains. It is a beautiful, impartial blanket, covering the earth and everyone on it with a heavy, peaceful hush. Let the image of that softly falling snow bring you peace. Let the quiet resolve of the human heart, capable of enduring such immense cold and such incredible distance, comfort your own spirit. Close your eyes, and feel the gentle, soothing rhythm of the winter night. There is no more marching today. There is no more digging. There is only the incredibly soft, whispering sound of the snow settling over a sleeping world, granting everyone, for just a few precious hours, the gentle mercy of rest. There is a profound, incredibly quiet moment when the massive machines we build to conquer the earth simply surrender to the sky. When we think of a world cast in winter, we often imagine the soft, joyful falling of snowflakes, the gentle dusting of pine trees, or the quiet, muffled peace of a sleeping forest. But the winter that descended upon the vast, open plains of the east was not a gentle season. It was a profound, almost unimaginable freezing of the world. The temperature plummeted to a place where words like cold completely lose their meaning. It was an absolute, crushing force, a physical presence that pressed down upon the earth, seeking to hold everything perfectly, permanently still. For months, the earth had trembled beneath the weight of progress. Enormous, terrifying giants of iron and steel had roared across the dusty summer roads and waded through the deep, sticky autumn mud. They were the pride of factories, built to be entirely invincible, fueled by fire and driven by an unstoppable, metallic heartbeat. But tonight, the steel has died. Let us walk quietly through the deep, squeaking snow, past the edge of a frozen, skeletal birch forest, and look at these machines now. The air here is so incredibly dry and sharp that taking a breath feels like inhaling tiny, glittering shards of diamond. The wind has swept the snow into beautiful, smooth drifts against the flanks of the massive transports and armored vehicles, slowly burying them in a sea of pure, unbroken white. Touch the side of one of these metal giants. It does not feel like steel anymore, it feels like a block of solid, ancient ice. The oil inside the massive engines, once warm and fluid, has thickened into a heavy, black tar, locking the gears entirely in place. The fuel lines are completely frozen. The batteries are drained of all their invisible life. Even the metal itself, so incredibly strong in the summer heat, has become terrifyingly brittle in the deep freeze. If you were to strike it, it might ring with a hollow, tragic sound, or simply crack like a dry winter twig. The machines, meant to master the landscape, are now perfectly, helplessly imprisoned by it. They sit silently in the dark, resembling great, extinct beasts that have closed their eyes for a long, final hibernation. But beside these frozen husks of steel, there is life. The young men who rode inside these iron beasts are suddenly deeply, intimately aware of their own incredibly fragile biology. They are no longer soldiers operating machinery, they are just soft, breathing creatures, entirely dependent on the incredibly delicate heat generated by their own beating hearts. Look closely at a small group of them, gathered in the lee of a silent, useless supply truck. The massive iron wheels offer no warmth, only a tiny, fleeting break from the relentless, slicing wind that sweeps across the plain. They have pulled the heavy canvas tarps off the frozen cargo and wrapped themselves completely within the thick fabric, creating a bizarre, communal tent in the snow. Inside this canvas sanctuary, it is entirely dark. They cannot light a fire. The wood in the forest is frozen solid, the wind is far too fierce, and their matches are too precious. So, they rely entirely on each other. 5 young men sit as close together as physically possible. They have pulled their knees tightly to their chests, tucking their chin down into their coats, wrapping their arms securely around the shoulders of the man next to them. They can feel the shivering of their friends. It is a shared, rhythmic trembling, a collective, vibrating heartbeat in the dark. One of the boys, sitting perfectly in the center where it is just a fraction of a degree warmer, closes his eyes tightly and tries to mentally transport himself away from the freezing canvas. He takes a slow, careful breath of the stale, freezing air, and he begins to whisper. He doesn't speak of the war. He speaks of the old, heavy cast iron stove in his grandmother's kitchen, thousands of miles away. He remembers how it used to glow a dull, beautiful cherry red on the coldest nights of January. He describes, in a soft, lulling voice, the incredible, radiant heat that used to wash over his face when she opened the little iron door to add another log of seasoned oak. He talks about the smell of melting butter, the scent of toasted oats, and the way the golden light would dance across the wooden floorboards. He whispers this memory into the dark like a prayer. He paints a picture so incredibly vivid, so deeply infused with love and longing, that for a few, precious seconds, the other men in the tent actually feel a phantom warmth bloom deep within their own chests. They share this beautiful memory like a physical meal, feeding on the absolute comfort of his words, letting the image of the cherry red stove hold back the frostbite just a little bit longer. In this immense, freezing isolation, connection is the only thing that keeps the human spirit from shattering like the cold steel outside. When everything else falls away, we instinctively seek out the warmth of a shared story, the gentle understanding of another human being, and a safe place where we do not feel quite so alone in the dark. Finding those profound connections and uncovering the deep, unvarnished stories of those who huddled together in the past is a beautiful journey. If you are seeking a place to dive deeper into these hidden histories and to find a warm, welcoming community of history lovers, I would love to invite you to join my Patreon. There, we share free podcasts, deep dives into the uncensored realities of the past, and we have a tip jar to help keep these stories alive. It is a quiet sanctuary for those who wish to understand the deeply human side of history. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Outside the canvas tarp, the wind continues its long, mournful song across the frozen steppe. Let us leave the sleeping boys and drift out over the vast, wide ocean. The contrast between what we build and who we are has never been so incredibly stark. The machines were forged in massive, roaring fires, shaped by heavy hammers, and designed to withstand the absolute worst punishments the world could offer. Yet, in the face of this profound, ancient cold, the steel simply surrendered. But the incredibly soft, vulnerable human heart, a delicate muscle wrapped in fragile skin, continues to beat. It continues to pump warm blood through freezing veins. It continues to dream of grandmothers and cherry-red stoves. It continues to hope. Miles away, on the exact opposite side of this frozen expanse, the story is beautifully, tragically mirrored. Let us look at another young boy, wrapped in a heavy, white sheepskin coat that smells faintly of lanolin and old wood smoke. He is standing waist-deep in a narrow, snow-filled trench carved out of the hard earth. He holds a rifle, but the metal of the barrel is so intensely cold that it would instantly tear the skin right off his bare hands if he were to touch it. He has carefully wrapped the iron in torn strips of an old, green wool blanket, tying it softly with pieces of twine. He does not feel like a warrior tonight. Standing alone in the vast, white emptiness, he feels like a tiny, solitary guardian of a very small, very fragile flame. He slowly lifts his head and looks up at the sky. The heavy winter clouds have momentarily parted, revealing a breathtaking, sweeping river of stars. The Milky Way stretches across the black, velvety canvas like a magnificent ribbon of frosted diamond dust. The stars do not twinkle, they burn with a cold, piercing, eternal light. It is the exact same sky that the boys under the canvas tarp are sleeping beneath. It is the exact same moon casting long, pale blue shadows across the snow. If all of these exhausted, freezing young men could somehow just stand up, walk across the quiet, impartial snow, and look at each other in the moonlight, they would see perfectly mirrored reflections. They would see the exact same chapped lips. They would see the exact same frost in their eyelashes. And they would see the exact same desperate, quiet longing for a hot cup of tea, a soft bed, and the comforting embrace of home. The grand lines drawn on the maps do not matter to the frost. The bitter wind does not ask what language you speak before it cuts through your coat. The deep, eternal winter treats every single beating heart with the exact same, absolute indifference. And yet, despite the cold, the men do not turn to ice. They rub their hands together. They share their last piece of hard bread. They gently pull the blanket higher over the shoulders of a shivering friend. They survive not because of the steel they brought with them, but because of the incredible, unyielding resilience they found within themselves. The night deepens, wrapping the entire world in a vast, icy embrace. The cold is a heavy, silent blanket, but beneath it, life beautifully and stubbornly refuses to surrender. Let the quiet, steady rhythm of those brave, beating hearts lull you into a sense of deep peace. They are still out there in the memory of the snow, sharing their phantom warmth, softly surviving the freezing dark. Rest now, safe and comfortable beneath your own warm blankets, knowing that no matter how incredibly deep the winter gets, the human spirit continues to gently glow, a tiny, beautiful, unyielding ember against the frost. There is a profoundly quiet strength found not in the roar of an engine, but in the slow, steady scrape of an iron shovel against the winter ice. Let us travel now from the vast, empty plains, carried on a gentle winter breeze, until we reach the very edges of a sprawling, ancient city. The heavy snow that blankets the open steppe has also fallen here, draping the rooftops, the grand avenues, and the twisting alleyways in a soft, completely immaculate layer of white. The sky above is a pale, milky pearl, casting a serene, diffused light over the capital. If you were to stand on the outskirts of this great city and look out toward the horizon, you would not see a wall of stone or a fortress of steel. Instead, you would see thousands upon thousands of ordinary people, standing shoulder to shoulder in the freezing air, slowly carving a line into the earth. They are not soldiers. They are grandmothers wearing heavy, knitted shawls over their coats. They are university students with ink still stained on their fingertips. They are bakers, musicians, and school teachers. They have left their warm hearths and their quiet routines to step out into the biting cold, armed with nothing but pickaxes, wooden shovels, and an immense, unshakable love for the streets they call home. Listen to the rhythm of their work. It is a slow, hypnotic sound. The soft thud of a pickaxe hitting the frozen soil. The rough scrape of metal sliding beneath the snow. The heavy, exhausted exhales of breath rising into the incredibly cold air, turning into tiny, beautiful white clouds that drift up and fade into the gray sky. Among the incredibly long line of citizens, there is an older woman. For 30 years, she has worked in the quiet, dusty archives of a grand library near the center of the city. Her hands are used to turning the incredibly fragile, yellowed pages of ancient poetry. They are small, delicate hands, now wrapped tightly in strips of old flannel to protect them from the blistering cold of the wooden shovel handle. She pauses for a moment, leaning her weight against the shovel, and looks softly at the young woman digging beside her. The young woman is a mother, her cheeks flushed a deep, bright pink from the wind, a bright blue woolen scarf wrapped tightly around her head. The mother meets the older woman's eyes, and without saying a single word, she reaches into her deep pocket. She pulls out a tiny, precious cube of sugar. She breaks it perfectly in half with her numb fingers and offers a piece to the librarian. The older woman takes the sugar, resting it on her tongue, letting the sudden, brilliant sweetness dissolve into warmth. She offers a small, incredibly tired, but deeply genuine smile. In this vast ocean of snow and uncertainty, that tiny half-cube of sugar is a profound act of grace. It is a whispered promise between strangers that they are in this together, bound by the quiet, shared heartbeat of their city. Deep within the city itself, the atmosphere is incredibly surreal. The grand, sprawling center, the famous Red Square, has completely changed its face. The magnificent, colorful onion domes, which usually catch the sunlight in brilliant flashes of gold and crimson, have been carefully painted over in muted, dark tones. Enormous canvases have been stretched across the facades of the historic buildings, painted to look like rows of ordinary houses from above. The city is holding its breath, wearing a giant, patchwork quilt to hide itself from the sky. Walking through these disguised streets feels like walking through a beautiful, silent dream. The snow falls continuously, huge, feathery flakes drifting down in slow motion, landing gently on the shoulders of the few people hurrying home. The tram tracks are mostly quiet, covered in a soft, white dusting. The beautiful, glowing street lamps have been turned off or covered in thick blue fabric, leaving the avenues to be illuminated only by the pale, ethereal glow of the snow reflecting the moonlight. The librarian, finishing her long shift at the edge of the city, walks slowly down one of these quiet avenues. Her muscles ache with a deep, heavy fatigue, but as she looks around at the disguised buildings, her mind drifts to the archives she left behind. She thinks of the thousands of stories, the diaries, the histories of her people, safely boxed up and hidden deep in the basement of the library. She realizes that the city is not just made of bricks and mortar, it is made of memories. It is made of the quiet, everyday lives of the people who walk its streets, who share their sugar, who hold the line. Preserving these memories, uncovering the quiet courage of an ordinary librarian with a shovel, or a mother sharing her last piece of sweetness, is a fragile and beautiful task. It takes a profound amount of dedication to sift through the archives of the past and bring these incredibly human stories back into the light, ensuring they are never truly lost to the winter. If you find value and peace in these gently remembered moments, and wish to support the massive research it takes to craft these stories, I would be incredibly honored if you might consider leaving a small tip on my Ko-Fi page, even just a single $1. It helps keep the dedication to this history alive. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Thank you, truly, for listening and for caring about these gentle souls. As the deep, dark velvet of the night finally settles over the capital, the temperature drops even further. The snow continues its soft, hushed psalm against the window panes. But the people of the city do not sleep in their beds tonight. Instead, a gentle, steady migration begins. Families step out of their apartments, carrying heavy wool blankets, feather pillows, and thermos flasks filled with hot, dark tea. They walk quietly down the snowy sidewalks, descending the grand, stone staircases that lead deep beneath the earth. They are going down into the metro. The underground stations of this city are unlike any in the world. They are vast, subterranean palaces built of gleaming marble and polished granite. Enormous, sparkling crystal chandeliers hang from the high, vaulted ceilings, casting a rich, warm, golden light over the platforms. Tonight, these grand marble halls have been transformed into an enormous, quiet sanctuary. The trains have stopped running, parked silently deep in the tunnels. The tracks themselves have been covered with wooden planks. And upon every inch of the smooth stone floor, thousands of people have made their beds. Let us walk softly down the platform. The air down here is delightfully warm, carrying the comforting sense of old wool, damp coats, and sweet tea. The profound silence of the snow above is replaced by a gentle, soothing murmur. It is the sound of a city sleeping together in one giant room. An old man sits on a wooden crate, adjusting his reading glasses as he holds a small, worn book of poetry close to the light of a nearby lamp. A few feet away, a young mother has created a tiny nest of blankets for her children. She sits beside them, gently stroking her daughter's soft hair, humming a slow, traditional lullaby that echoes incredibly softly off the marble walls. The children sleep deeply, their faces relaxed and peaceful, completely untouched by the anxieties of the world above. To them, this grand, golden cavern is simply a wonderful, warm adventure. There is an incredible, profound sense of community in this underground palace. The social boundaries of the city have completely dissolved. The university professor sleeps beside the factory worker, the baker shares his tea with the librarian. They are completely united by the stone walls surrounding them, anchored deep in the warm, protecting earth. As the hours stretch on, the soft murmurs gently fade away. The old man closes his book, takes off his glasses, and rests his head against his folded coat. The mother's lullaby trails off into a quiet, contented sigh. If you were to close your eyes right now, standing in the middle of this vast station, you would feel a deep, steady vibration in the air. It is not the rumble of an approaching train, and it is certainly not the thunder of the world above. It is simply the combined, collective breath of thousands of people, sleeping safely in the golden light. It is the true, unshakable heartbeat of the city. Above ground, the snowflakes continue to fall upon the empty, heavily disguised red square. They fall upon the wooden shovels left standing in the frozen trenches at the edge of the town. They fall upon the vast, white plain stretching endlessly into the dark. The winter is incredibly cold, and the night is very long. But down here, beneath the marble arches, surrounded by the soft breathing of strangers who have become family, there is an absolute, deeply comforting warmth. Let the golden light of the chandeliers soothe your mind. Let the quiet humming of the lullaby carry you softly into sleep. The city stands, the people rest, and the quiet resilience of the human spirit gently endures, completely unbroken, in the beautiful, silent dark. There is a profound, dizzying moment when the earth simply vanishes, and the sky pours down to swallow the ground. Imagine stepping into a world where every single anchor you have ever known is suddenly erased. The horizon, that comforting, distant line that separates the soil from the heavens, has completely dissolved. The sky is no longer above you, and the ground is no longer below. There is only an endless, swirling, all-encompassing ocean of brilliant, blinding white. This is the winter whiteout. It is a storm, yes, but it does not arrive with the violent, crashing anger of a summer thunderstorm. It arrives like a heavy, silken curtain slowly dropping over the world. The snowflakes are massive, thick, and incredibly dense. They fall so rapidly and so heavily that they absorb every particle of light and every echo of sound. Let us walk into this beautiful, terrifying white labyrinth. The air is bitterly cold, but the wind does not howl. Instead, it hums. It is a constant, low, vibrating purr that rushes past your ears, singing a strange, hypnotic lullaby. It sweeps the loose snow across the invisible ground in long, flowing rivers of white dust, curling and dancing like mist over a frozen lake. Somewhere deep inside this swirling cloud, a young man is walking. Just 10 minutes ago, he was following the dark, familiar shape of a wooden supply wagon. He was focusing on the slow, rhythmic creak of the wooden wheels, using the sound as a tether to keep himself moving. But then, a sudden, heavy gust of wind swept across the plain, bringing with it an incredibly thick wall of snow. He squeezed his eyes shut for just a second, lowering his chin into the heavy wool of his collar to shield his face. When he opened his eyes, the wagon was gone. The dark shapes of his friends were gone. The creaking sound was entirely swallowed by the hum of the wind. He stopped walking. He stood perfectly still, his heavy leather boots buried up to the knees in the soft, powdery snow. He turned his head slowly to the left, and then to the right. There was no up. There was no down. There were no trees to mark the edge of a forest, no fences to suggest a road. He had stepped through an invisible door, completely severed from the rest of humanity, abandoned in a vast, empty room painted entirely in white. A quiet, creeping panic begins to flutter in his chest like a trapped bird. He takes a step forward, but his foot finds no solid purchase. He stumbles, the deep snow catching his heavy legs, pulling him down into its soft, freezing embrace. He quickly scrambles back to his feet, his breathing growing fast and shallow. He looks down at his own boots, but the wind is already furiously at work, beautifully and methodically erasing the deep holes he just made. Within seconds, his footprints are filled with fresh snow, smoothing out the surface as if he had never stepped there at all. The labyrinth does not just hide the path ahead, it completely erases the path behind. He forces himself to take a deep, slow breath of the freezing air. He knows that to panic here is to surrender. He must keep moving. He chooses a direction, though it is based on nothing more than a desperate hope, and begins to push his way through the deep drifts. With every step, the physical exhaustion grows heavier. The snow clings to the wool of his coat, turning him into a slow, moving snowman. His eyelashes are heavy with tiny, beautiful crystals of ice, forcing him to blink constantly just to see the emptiness in front of him. As the minutes stretch into what feels like endless hours, the labyrinth begins to play its quiet tricks on his exhausted mind. The constant, unbroken white becomes incredibly harsh on his eyes. It creates a strange, floating sensation, a sensory deprivation so absolute that his brain begins to invent things just to have something to hold on to. He thinks he sees the dark outline of a farmhouse just ahead. He pushes his aching legs harder, a surge of incredibly warm hope flooding his chest. But as he gets closer, the shape dissolves. It was nothing but a slightly darker shadow within the falling snow, a phantom created by the swirling wind. Then, he hears a voice. It is a soft, familiar voice calling his name. He stops, holding his breath, turning his head to listen. It sounds exactly like his older brother, calling him in from the fields for supper on a warm summer evening. He takes a step toward the sound, but it fades back into the low hum of the wind. The labyrinth is not just stealing his sight, it is pulling on the deepest, most tender strings of his memory. The sheer exhaustion begins to change from a painful ache into a strange, incredibly soft numbness. His legs feel heavy, yes, but they also feel surprisingly warm. The freezing wind no longer bites at his cheeks, it simply feels like a gentle pressure. The snow beneath his boots looks so incredibly soft. It looks like a massive, inviting feather bed. A quiet, deeply seductive thought whispers in his mind, just sit down. Just for 5 minutes. Rest your eyes, let the wind pass, and then you can keep walking. It is the most dangerous, beautiful lie the winter can tell. To fight the overwhelming urge to sleep, he reaches deep into the frozen pocket of his coat. His numb fingers fumble in the dark, searching for an anchor. They brush against a small, hard object. It is a simple, wooden spool of bright red thread. His mother had tucked it into his pack the day he left, a practical gift for mending torn buttons. He pulls the small spool out and holds it close to his face. In the middle of this vast, endless ocean of blinding white, that tiny splash of bright, vibrant red is a miracle. It is a sharp, beautiful anchor to the world of color, the world of warmth, the world of the living. He stares at the red thread, focusing all of his fading energy on that single, vivid hue. He imagines the fire in his hearth. He imagines the deep red apples in the autumn orchard. He uses the color as a lifeline, dragging his mind back from the soft, white edges of sleep. The stark reality of what these men endured in the deep snow is something that polite history often softens or turns away from. The true, unfiltered landscape of this winter was incredibly harsh, a desperate struggle hidden beneath a beautiful layer of frost. It can be difficult to fully comprehend the immense weight of this reality without seeing it through the eyes of those who were trapped within it. If you wish to understand the deeply unvarnished truth of this era, I have created a digital collection on Gumroad containing unseen, incredibly raw images and rare video footage of the war's most harsh realities, media that brings the stark truth of the labyrinth to life. It is a profound, respectful look at the unblurred past. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Clutching the red spool tightly in his frozen hand, the young man forces himself to take another step. And then another. Just as his heavy knees are about to finally buckle, just as the white world begins to softly fade to gray at the edges of his vision, a sudden, dark vertical line appears in the snow ahead of him. He blinks slowly, expecting it to be another trick, another phantom shadow. But the line remains. He drags his feet forward, completely exhausted, until he reaches it. It is a tree. A solitary, ancient pine tree, its massive, dark green branches drooping heavily under the immense weight of the snow. It is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen. And there, huddled beneath the lowest, widest branch, is a shape. It is not a soldier. It is an incredibly old local man, wrapped in layers of thick, dark wool, a heavy fur hat pulled low over his weathered, deeply lined face. He has been out checking a small line of rabbit snares, caught in the exact same sudden whiteout, and has taken shelter in the small, dry hollow beneath the ancient tree's roots. The young soldier collapses to his knees at the edge of the branches. He drops the spool of red thread into the snow. He cannot speak. His lips are cracked and completely frozen, his eyes wide and hollow with exhaustion. The old man looks at him. He sees the foreign uniform, coated in a thick crust of ice. He sees the rifle slung over the boy's shoulder. In a different world, under a different sky, this boy is an invader. This boy represents the grand, terrible storm that has swept across the old man's homeland. But inside the white labyrinth, none of that matters. The winter has stripped away all the insignias, all the borders, and all the flags. The old man sees a child. A freezing, incredibly lost child who is only moments away from fading into the snow forever. The old man does not hesitate. He reaches out with a thick, leather-gloved hand and grabs the collar of the boy's heavy coat, pulling him the rest of the way under the dark canopy of the pine branches. Underneath the tree, it is a different world. The incredibly thick layers of snow on the branches above act as a perfect, insulated roof. The howling hum of the wind is suddenly muffled, reduced to a distant, gentle whisper. The ground here is not covered in deep snow, but in a soft, dry bed of brown pine needles. The old man pushes the boy down onto the soft needles. He reaches into his own heavy coat and pulls out a small, battered tin flask. He unscrews the cap and gently lifts the boy's head, pressing the cold metal to his chapped lips. It is a harsh, incredibly strong homemade spirit. As it slides down the boy's throat, it burns like liquid fire, sending a sudden, shocking rush of heat straight into his chest. The boy coughs, his eyes watering, but he nods in quiet, profound gratitude. The old man then does something incredibly gentle. He reaches over and picks up the small wooden spool of red thread from where it had fallen in the snow. He wipes the ice from it with his thumb and quietly places it back into the boy's open palm, wrapping the boy's frozen fingers around it. They sit together in absolute silence beneath the roots of the ancient tree. They do not speak each other's language, and even if they did, there are no words needed. They simply lean their heavy shoulders against the rough bark of the trunk, staring out into the swirling, blinding white wall of the storm just a few feet away. Outside the branches, the labyrinth continues to shift and completely rearrange the world, erasing paths and burying the landscape in its deep, heavy sleep. It is a terrifying, beautiful, impartial force. But inside the tiny, dark hollow beneath the pine, there is a profound, quiet peace. Two human beings, brought together by the storm, sharing a tiny bit of warmth in the freezing dark. Let the image of that gentle shelter bring you comfort. Let the muffled, distant sound of the winter wind sing you a soothing lullaby. Close your eyes and feel the safe, dry pine needles beneath you. The labyrinth may swirl and completely erase the world outside, but you are safely anchored here, held in the quiet, enduring grace of a shared humanity, perfectly safe from the storm. There is a profound, miraculous comfort in the tiny, dancing light of a solitary flame when the rest of the world has gone entirely black. As the deepest, heaviest months of the winter settle over the vast, frozen plains, the nights stretch out, seemingly endless and incredibly dark. The sun, tired and pale, completely vanishes by mid-afternoon, leaving behind a sprawling landscape locked in ice and silence. When the wind finally dies down, dropping its howling song to a mere, breathless whisper, the cold becomes a physical weight. It is a profound, aching stillness that presses against the wooden walls of ruined farmhouses and the frozen edges of freshly dug trenches. In this beautiful, terrifying immensity of the dark, the human heart craves nothing more than the simple, ancient magic of a hearth fire. Let us walk softly through the deep, squeaking snow, our footsteps muffled by the immense, quiet night, until we reach the shattered remnants of a small, forgotten village. Most of the roofs have surrendered to the heavy snow, their thatched straw buried beneath a thick, white blanket. The windows are entirely gone, leaving empty, dark squares that look out onto the frozen road. But inside one of these broken homes, buried deep within the shadows, there is a gentle rustling. Two young men, wrapped so completely in scavenged blankets and heavy wool coats that they look like featureless, moving shadows, are kneeling on the frozen floorboards. In front of them is an old, soot-stained brick stove. It is a humble, beautiful thing, the kind of stove that has anchored this home for generations, holding the memories of 1,000 boiling kettles and warm, rising loaves of bread. One of the men reaches into the inner pocket of his tunic, his fingers completely numb, fumbling with incredible care. He brings out a tiny, precious matchbox. It is his very last one. He also pulls out a small handful of dry birch bark he has been carrying against his chest for 3 days, keeping it warm with his own body heat so it would not absorb the dampness of the air. He arranges the thin, papery strips of bark inside the cold iron belly of the stove. His movements are agonizingly slow, reverent, like a priest performing a deeply sacred, quiet ritual. He holds his breath. He strikes the match. There is a sharp, tiny scratching sound, and then a magnificent, brilliant spark. The small flame catches the edge of the birch bark. At first, it is just a fragile, trembling ribbon of blue and gold. The two men lean in incredibly close, their faces just inches from the stove, completely shielding the newborn fire with their bodies to protect it from any wandering draft. Slowly, beautifully, the bark begins to curl and blacken. The flame grows, feeding on the dry wood, blossoming into a bright, steady orange. The man gently places a few larger, frozen twigs on top, listening to the soft, comforting hiss of the melting ice. As the fire finally takes hold, casting a rich, golden, flickering light into the dark room, the transformation in the two young men is truly extraordinary. The heavy, exhausted lines on their faces seem to miraculously melt away. In the soft, amber glow, they do not look like tired, hardened soldiers at the edge of the world. They look like young boys again, their eyes wide and reflecting the dancing flames, mesmerized by the simple, beautiful gift of heat. The air inside the ruined room begins to change. The bitter, biting frost is slowly pushed back into the corners. The incredibly sweet, earthy scent of wood smoke fills the air, a perfume more precious to them right now than anything else on earth. They sit silently on the floor, leaning their heavy shoulders against the brick, letting the warmth slowly seep through their damp coats and into their aching bones. But the light of a fire in the dark cannot be completely hidden. Just 50 yards away, across a snowy, completely silent garden, lies another ruined house. And in the cellar of this house, huddled together in the freezing blackness, are 3 young men from the opposing side. They are equally exhausted, equally wrapped in freezing wool, and equally desperate for the morning sun. One of them is sitting near a crack in the cellar wall, gazing out into the dark. Suddenly, he sees it. A faint, flickering orange glow painting the snow outside the neighboring house. And then, carried on the incredibly still, cold air, he smells it. The distinct, unmistakable aroma of a birchwood fire. He knows exactly what is happening over there. In a different season, under a different sky, this would be the moment to raise an alarm, to reach for the cold steel of a rifle, to let the noise of the world shatter the quiet night. But the winter is a magnificent, terrible equalizer. The boy does not reach for his weapon. He simply closes his eyes and breathes in the smell of the smoke. He leans his head back against the frozen stone of the cellar wall. He can almost hear the soft crackle of the dry wood. In his mind, he crosses the snowy garden, steps through the broken doorway, and simply sits down next to the fire. He imagines holding his own freezing, raw hands out toward the golden light. He imagines the incredible, soothing wave of heat washing over his face. The other 2 boys in the cellar smell the smoke as well. They do not speak. They simply shift closer together in the dark, closing their eyes, silently sharing in the stolen warmth of their enemy's hearth. For tonight, in this tiny, forgotten corner of the vast steppe, there is no battle. There are no sides. There is only the absolute, primal human need to be warm, and a profound, unspoken empathy that bridges the frozen distance between them. They are completely united by the beautiful, fragile light of a single, shared fire. It is in these incredibly quiet, hidden moments of unspoken connection, where humanity shines beautifully through the darkest and coldest of nights, that we find the true heart of history. We are all, in our own ways, searching for a warm hearth in the dark, a place to gather, to listen, and to feel connected to the stories of those who walked before us. If you feel drawn to these deep, human moments and are looking for a community of kindred spirits who love history just as much as you do, I would be so honored to welcome you to my Patreon. It is a wonderful, warm space where I share free podcasts, raw, unblurred video sections, and deeply researched stories that we can explore together. It is a place to find a community of history lovers gathered around our own digital fire. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Thank you for being here, and for sharing this warmth with me. Let us return to the room with the stove, where the fire has now settled into a steady, comforting rhythm. The two boys have taken off their heavy, wet boots, placing them carefully near the bricks to dry. The leather begins to steam softly, releasing the scent of melted snow and old earth. They have found a small, dented tin cup, filled it with fresh snow from the windowsill, and balanced it carefully on the flat top of the stove to boil. While they wait for the water, one of the boys looks around the room. In the flickering, golden light, he can see the faint, ghostly outlines of the life that used to be lived here. He sees the faded, floral wallpaper peeling gently in the corners. He sees a heavy, wooden table, its surface scarred by years of chopping vegetables and kneading dough. He stands up, walking softly in his thick woolen socks, and approaches the corner of the room. Lying there, half buried under a pile of fallen plaster and snow, is a small, beautifully carved wooden bird. It is a child's toy, its wings painted a faded, lovely shade of blue. He reaches down and picks it up. The wood feels smooth and incredibly fragile in his large, calloused hand. He walks back to the stove. He doesn't throw it into the fire, even though the dry wood would offer another minute of precious heat. Instead, with a quiet, profound respect, he reaches up and places the little blue bird gently on the brick mantel, right above the fire. It is a tiny, beautiful act of reverence. It is a silent acknowledgement of the family who once gathered around this exact same hearth, who laughed in this room, who loved each other within these walls. By placing the bird on the mantel, he is honoring the ghosts of the house, thanking them for the shelter, and promising, in his own quiet way, that their memory is safe with him for the night. The tin cup finally begins to rattle softly, a tiny wisp of white steam curling up from the rim. They share the hot water, passing the cup back and forth. It tastes faintly of iron and smoke, but to them, it is the most wonderful, soothing drink in the entire world. It warms them from the inside out, a liquid comfort that finally allows their exhausted muscles to fully relax. Slowly, the bright orange flames begin to die down, leaving behind a glowing, magnificent bed of cherry red embers. The embers pulse incredibly softly in the dark, breathing in and out with the gentle drafts of the room, looking exactly like a cluster of beautiful, fallen stars resting in the ashes. The two boys lie down on the wooden floorboards, as close to the bricks as they can get. They pull their dry blankets up to their chins. The room is quiet now, filled only with the incredibly soft, rhythmic ticking of the cooling iron and the gentle, steady breathing of the sleeping men. Across the garden, in the dark cellar, the three other boys have also fallen asleep, their dreams filled with the sweet smell of birch wood and the imagined warmth of a golden fire. The winter night outside continues its long, silent watch. The frost creeps back up the window panes, painting beautiful, delicate ferns of ice across the glass. The snow falls gently, covering the tracks in the garden, wrapping the broken village in a thick, peaceful blanket of white. But deep within the walls, the beautiful, stubborn embers continue to glow. They are a tiny, defiant heartbeat in the middle of an ocean of ice. Let the image of those softly glowing embers bring you peace. Let the sweet, imagined scent of the wood smoke calm your mind. Close your eyes, and feel the gentle, radiant warmth of the hearth pushing away the shadows. You are safe. You are warm. And in this incredibly quiet, peaceful dark, surrounded by the soft breathing of history, you can finally, truly rest. There is a specific, profound heaviness in the heart when you realize the only way to survive is to turn your back on the horizon you sacrificed everything to reach. For months, the grand, terrifying momentum of the world had only flowed in one direction. Millions of young men had been swept up in a massive, eastward tide, marching toward the rising sun. They had walked through the suffocating, golden dust of summer, through the deep, clinging mud of the autumn, and finally, into the blinding, frozen teeth of the deepest winter the earth could offer. They had chased the horizon until they simply could not take another step. And now, standing in the vast, unbroken white ocean of the steppe, the tide has finally broken. The order is not shouted with grand military fervor. It is not announced with the sharp, crisp blast of a bugle. It is simply a quiet, exhausted murmur that passes from shivering man to shivering man, carried on the breath of the freezing wind. It is time to turn around. It is time to walk back into the snow. Imagine standing in that endless, frozen field. The sky above is a pale, milky sheet of gray, and the air is so incredibly cold that it feels brittle, as if it might shatter if you spoke too loudly. A young boy, his face wrapped in layers of scavenged wool and rough scarves, stands perfectly still. His eyelashes are heavy with tiny, beautiful crystals of frost. For half a year, every morning of his life has involved waking up and stepping eastward. The east was the destination. The east was the end of the war. Now, very slowly, he shuffles his heavy, frozen boots in the deep snow. He turns his shoulders. He turns his head. For the very first time in months, he looks toward the west. The physical sensation of this turn is deeply disorienting. The bitter, cutting wind that has been stinging his cheeks for weeks is suddenly pushing against his back. It feels like an invisible hand, gently but firmly pressing him away from the city in the distance, urging him to leave. He takes a deep, ragged breath of the icy air, and he takes his first step back the way he came. But walking west means carrying a sorrow far heavier than the freezing weight of a rucksack. It means leaving pieces of their hearts behind in the snow. Let us walk softly to the edge of a small, silent grove of birch trees. The white, peeling bark of the trunks blends almost perfectly into the winter landscape, creating a quiet, ghostly sanctuary in the middle of the frozen plains. Beneath the highest, snow-laden branches, two young men are kneeling in the deep powder. They do not have shovels. The earth beneath the snow is frozen as solid as iron, completely unyielding to anything but pickaxes and explosives. They are using their bare, red, trembling hands, and the curved, cold steel of a helmet, to scoop away the snow, digging a shallow, temporary hollow. Lying beside them, wrapped tightly in a pale gray wool blanket, is their friend. He was the boy who always had a smile, even when the rations were empty. He was the one who used to hum soft, cheerful folk songs to keep them awake during the long, terrifying night watches. But the winter is a quiet, impartial thief, and last night, as they huddled together in the dark, the cold simply stole his breath away in his sleep. The two surviving boys work in absolute, reverent silence. They do not cry, the wind is too fierce, and their tears would only freeze upon their cheeks. Instead, they pour all of their grief, all of their profound love for their fallen brother, into the slow, careful movements of their hands. They gently lift the blanket-wrapped shape and place him softly into the hollow. They pull the snow back over him, smoothing it out with their palms, tucking him into the earth as carefully as a mother tucking a child into bed. One of the boys stands up. He walks to a nearby birch tree and, with immense effort, breaks off two straight branches. He pulls a small piece of twine from his pocket, a precious, practical thing he had been saving, and carefully lashes the two branches together to form a simple, fragile wooden cross. He pushes the base of the cross deep into the packed snow at the head of the grave. Then, as a final, deeply personal act of farewell, he takes his friend's steel helmet and rests it gently on top of the wooden post. The three of them had shared everything. They had shared their bread, their fears, and their dreams of home. Now, they must leave him here, completely alone in the vast, silent taiga. One boy reaches out and rests his gloved hand on the cold steel of the helmet for just a fleeting second. It is a silent promise that he will never be forgotten. Then, they turn, their heads bowed low, and they begin to walk westward, following the long line of retreating shadows. These physical remnants left behind in the snow, the makeshift wooden crosses, the quiet, discarded helmets resting beneath the winter sky, are incredibly powerful tethers to the past. They are the tangible, physical echoes of the young men who walked this impossible road. For many of us, holding a physical piece of history, or keeping a small artifact on our shelves, is a beautiful and deeply respectful way to honor the quiet heroism and the unimaginable struggles of those who never came home. It helps bridge the vast distance of time. If you feel drawn to honoring the past through physical history, I highly recommend exploring the incredible collection of World War II memorabilia and historical artifacts available on Amazon. Having a physical connection to this era can bring these deeply human stories to life in a profound way. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. As the day wears on, the long, winding column of men moves slowly across the blank canvas of the earth. It is not a panicked run. It is a quiet, rhythmic, agonizing trudge. Listen to the sound of the retreat. It is nothing but the soft, hypnotic crunch, crunch, crunch of thousands of boots sinking into the dry, powdery snow. The men lean heavily on each other. If one boy stumbles, his neighbor instinctively reaches out a thick, wool-wrapped arm to pull him back upright. There is no energy left for conversation. There is only the collective, unspoken will to simply put one foot in front of the other. The young boy we saw earlier, the one who took the first step west, is walking near the edge of the column. He reaches a freezing hand into his tunic pocket. His fingers brush against the familiar, worn edges of a letter he received from his father months ago, back when the air was warm and the roads were made of dust. He doesn't pull the letter out to read it, his fingers are too numb to unfold the delicate paper. But he gently presses the envelope against his chest. He thinks of his father's handwriting. He thinks of the small, warm kitchen where that letter was written. He realizes, with a soft, aching clarity, that the boy who received that letter in the summer is completely gone. That innocent, hopeful boy was left behind, buried somewhere in the freezing mud and the howling blizzards of the east. The person walking west is someone entirely new, shaped and carved by the profound, quiet sorrows of the winter. Slowly, gracefully, the pale winter sun begins to set perfectly in front of them. Because they are marching west, they are walking directly into the dying light of the day. The sky transforms into a breathtaking, melancholy masterpiece. The pale gray canvas bursts into deep, rich shades of bruised violet, soft lavender, and a brilliant, striking gold. The light reflects off the endless plains of snow, making the entire world glow with a beautiful, ethereal warmth that completely belies the bitter cold of the air. The men cast incredibly long, thin shadows behind them, stretching out toward the east, toward the places they have left behind. The boy stops for just a moment. He turns his head and looks back over his shoulder. He sees the endless line of footprints, carved deeply into the pristine white snow. They are a staggering, heartbreaking visual record of their journey. A dotted line of survival, marking every single agonizing step they have taken away from the storm. But as he watches, the wind gently picks up. It hums a low, soothing note across the flat earth. The wind catches the loose, dry powder from the surface of the drifts and sweeps it beautifully, softly across the open plain. He watches as the snow drifts gently over the footprints. First, it fills the deep heel marks. Then, it smooths out the ridges. In a matter of minutes, the incredibly harsh, heavy tracks of the retreating men are completely erased. The landscape heals itself with a quiet, indifferent grace, returning the world to a perfect, undisturbed blanket of white. Even the small wooden cross in the birch grove, with the helmet resting upon it, is slowly being wrapped in this gentle white embrace. The snow builds up on the rim of the steel, softening its hard edges, tucking the fallen boy safely and warmly into the eternal, peaceful sleep of the forest. The footprints facing west will not remain for the history books. They will not leave a permanent scar upon the earth. The winter claims them all, sweeping away the grand movements of men and leaving behind only the vast, silent, beautiful peace of the natural world. The boy turns his face back toward the golden sunset. He takes a deep, quiet breath of the frosty air, pulling his scarf up over his cold nose. He leans into the wind, and he continues to walk. Let the image of that gentle, erasing snow wash over your own mind. Let it smooth out the heavy footprints of your day, softening the edges of your thoughts and burying the noise of the world beneath a heavy, peaceful quiet. The march is slow, but the sunset is beautiful, and the dark, comforting night is waiting just ahead. Close your eyes, listen to the soft whisper of the winter wind, and allow yourself to simply drift into the gentle, forgiving embrace of rest. There is a profound, incredibly gentle mercy in the way the frozen earth finally forgives the winter. For what felt like an eternity, the world had been locked inside a silent, breathless vault of white. The frost had been a heavy, unyielding iron blanket, holding the forests, the endless plains, and the weary hearts of millions in a state of perfectly suspended animation. But the earth, no matter how deeply it sleeps, always remembers the sun. Very slowly, the great, agonizing wheel of the seasons begins to turn once again. It does not happen all at once. It begins as a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the light. The pale, milky gray of the winter sky slowly gives way to a softer, warmer shade of powder blue. The sun, which had hung so low and weak on the horizon for months, begins to climb just a little bit higher each afternoon. And then, one quiet morning, the absolute silence of the deep freeze is broken by a sound so simple, and yet so miraculously beautiful, that it makes men stop in their tracks just to listen. Drip, plink, drip. It is the sound of a single drop of water falling from the tip of a pine branch, landing softly on the crust of the snow below. It is the incredibly quiet, rhythmic heartbeat of the spring thaw. Let us stand perfectly still in the middle of a warming birch grove and listen as the forest slowly wakes up. As the afternoon sun filters down through the bare branches, touching the heavy layers of snow, the single drip becomes a dozen. Then 100. 1,000 tiny, silver droplets falling from the bark, sliding down the long, pale trunks of the trees, turning the entire woodland into a gentle, weeping chorus of relief. The air itself fundamentally changes. The sharp, brittle cold that used to burn the lungs is gone. In its place is a cool, deeply refreshing breeze that carries a scent the men have not known for half a year. It is the rich, dark, intoxicating aroma of damp soil, wet moss, and the incredible, enduring promise of life. At the edge of the woods, sitting on an overturned wooden crate, a young soldier lifts his face toward the sky. He is completely perfectly still. For the very first time since the autumn leaves fell, he reaches up and slowly unwinds the heavy, scratchy wool scarf from around his neck. He unbuttons the top of his thick coat. He takes off his heavy gloves, resting his bare hands on his knees. He closes his eyes and simply lets the golden sunlight wash over his skin. The warmth is not just a physical sensation, it is a profound, emotional unburdening. For months, his entire existence had been curled inward, his shoulders hunched, his muscles tense, fighting a desperate, daily battle simply to keep his blood moving. Now, under the incredibly gentle touch of the spring sun, his shoulders finally, beautifully drop. He lets out a long, slow exhale, and as he breathes out, it feels as though a massive, invisible weight is lifting from his chest. He survived. The winter is over. But the thaw brings more than just warmth. As the immense, rolling oceans of snow begin to sink and melt away, they slowly peel back the white curtain, revealing the landscape that was hidden beneath. The melting snow acts as a quiet, impartial historian. It pulls back its heavy blanket to reveal the forgotten echoes of the past year. As the drifts recede, they uncover the broken roads, the silent, rusted husks of the great steel machines, and the quiet, personal remnants of the men who walked this way. The young soldier opens his eyes and looks down at the ground near his boots. The thick crust of ice has melted into a small, muddy puddle. Resting perfectly in the center of the dark earth, washed clean by the melting snow, is a small, silver pocket watch. He reaches down and picks it up. The metal is cool and smooth against his warm palm. The glass face is completely shattered, and the delicate, intricate hands are frozen forever at 3:15. He rubs his thumb gently over the engraved backing. He does not know who dropped it in the frantic, terrifying days of the autumn retreat. He does not know if the man who carried it is sitting under this same sun miles away, or if he is resting eternally beneath the birch trees. Holding this small, broken piece of time, the soldier feels a deep, quiet ache in his heart. The thaw has freed his body from the cold, but it has also thawed his memory. During the deepest, darkest days of the blizzard, the human mind beautifully protects itself by numbing the emotions. You do not have the energy to grieve when you are struggling just to breathe. But now, with the warmth returning and the immediate danger fading, all the quiet sorrows, the faces of lost friends, and the deeply buried fears begin to rise softly to the surface, just like the dark earth emerging from the snow. He tucks the silver watch carefully into his breast pocket. He will carry it for the man who cannot. It is a silent, everyday heroism, the beautiful willingness to hold the memory of a stranger, to ensure that the echoes of the past are not simply swallowed by the mud. This landscape is uncovering so many secrets as the snow retreats. The things that were buried in the dark, the quiet operations, and the hidden sacrifices are finally being brought out into the light. History is so often made up of these forgotten facts, the incredibly human stories that were obscured by the heavy storms of time. If you find yourself captivated by these hidden layers of the past, and you want to understand the deeply secret events that shaped this era, I would love to share something special with you. When you join my free email newsletter, I will send you a beautifully detailed, free ebook called The Shadow War: 5 Top Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. Each week, we take a gentle, deep dive into these forgotten facts, unearthing the quiet courage of those who operated in the shadows. It is a wonderful way to keep these memories alive. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Let us wander away from the soldier, following the gentle flow of a newly awakened stream, until we reach a small, quiet village nestled in a shallow valley. The village has suffered deeply. The wooden fences lean at broken angles, and many of the rooftops remain dark and damaged from the long year of marching armies. Yet, walking down the muddy, unpaved lane is a woman. She wears a simple, faded shawl over her hair, and her boots sink softly into the wet earth with every step. She has returned home. She spent the long winter huddled with relatives in a distant town, waiting for the storm to pass. Now, she walks slowly toward the small plot of land where her family's cottage stands. When she reaches the wooden gate, she stops. Her heart feels heavy, seeing the weathered, empty look of her home. The yard is completely covered in a chaotic tangle of broken branches, forgotten canvas tarps, and the muddy debris left behind by the melting snowdrifts. It looks like a place where life has been completely erased. But the earth is incredibly, beautifully stubborn. She walks slowly into the yard, her eyes scanning the mud. She walks toward the corner of the house, where her grandmother used to keep a small, carefully tended garden. She kneels down in the damp soil, ignoring the mud soaking into her skirt. With her bare hands, she gently brushes away a layer of wet, rotting leaves and the cold, gray ash of a long-dead fire. And there, pushing bravely through the dark, cold mud, is a tiny, magnificent spark of bright green. It is the delicate, tightly furled shoot of a snowdrop flower. The bulb had rested completely hidden in the freezing dark, surviving the heavy boots, the roaring machines, and the crushing weight of the ice. It had waited with a profound, quiet patience for the winter to break. And the very moment the sun warmed the soil, it had begun its slow, beautiful journey back toward the light. The woman stares at the tiny green shoot, and a single, warm tear escapes her eye, tracing a clean line down her dusty cheek. It falls softly onto the dark earth. It is not a tear of sorrow, but a tear of profound, overwhelming relief. In that tiny, fragile leaf, she sees the enduring promise of the world. She sees that despite the unimaginable harshness they have all endured, the earth has not forgotten how to grow. The seasons will continue to turn. The rivers will continue to flow. The deep, agonizing wounds of the winter will, given enough time and enough sunlight, slowly begin to heal. She gently cups her hands around the tiny plant, not to pick it, but simply to protect it from the breeze for a moment. She whispers a soft, incredibly quiet prayer of thanks to the forgiving soil. All across the vast, waking continent, this exact same quiet miracle is unfolding. The great, frozen rivers, which had been locked in solid white ice for months, begin to groan and shift. With a sound like distant, rolling thunder, the ice cracks, breaking into massive, glittering sheets that are carried away by the rushing, dark water beneath. The sound of the flowing water is a magnificent, rushing symphony of freedom. It washes the banks, cleanses the stones, and carries the heavy memories of the winter away toward the open sea. The air fills with the incredibly sweet, soothing songs of returning birds. They flit among the budding branches of the birch trees, building their nests with the soft, dry grass that the sun has warmed. They do not know about the sweeping tragedies of the past year. They only know that the sky is blue, the air is sweet, and it is time to build a home. The young men who survived the white labyrinth sit outside their tents, letting the sun dry their damp coats. They pull out crinkled, water-stained letters from their pockets and read the faded ink, finally allowing themselves to feel the love and the longing that they had to bury in the snow. They share quiet, gentle smiles with one another, deeply bound by the shared, unspoken miracle simply of being alive to feel the spring breeze. The thaw of memory is a delicate, bittersweet season. It requires us to look at what was lost, to honor the broken pocket watches and the empty wooden chairs, but it also invites us to turn our faces back toward the sun. It reminds us that no winter lasts forever. Let the gentle warmth of this imagined sunlight rest upon your own shoulders. Let the incredibly soothing, rhythmic sound of the melting ice and the flowing river wash away the heavy burdens of your day. The cold has passed. The earth is soft and welcoming. Close your eyes, breathe in the sweet, clean scent of the returning spring, and allow yourself to rest in the beautiful, quiet peace of a world that is finally, gently, learning how to bloom once again. There is a peaceful, ancient secret hidden in the way the tall grass bows to the wind, keeping the memories of the earth safely tucked beneath its roots. If you were to walk out into the very heart of the eastern steppe today, long after the long shadows of history have faded, you would not find a landscape of sorrow. You would find an incredibly vast, sweeping ocean of green and gold. The earth, with its infinite and beautiful patience, has gently healed itself. The incredibly deep trenches that once scarred the soil have been filled by decades of falling autumn leaves and soft, melting snows. The heavy, iron remnants of the past have slowly rusted away, returning to the soil, replaced now by the bright, delicate petals of wild chamomile and the soft, purple blooms of summer sage. When the wind moves across this endless expanse, it does not howl or rage. It sighs. It creates a beautiful, hypnotic rippling effect across the top of the tall grass, making the entire world look like a calm, breathing sea. It is a place of profound, absolute stillness, where the only sounds are the rhythmic chirping of the crickets, the high, sweet song of a meadowlark, and the incredibly soft rustle of the stalks swaying together in the breeze. Let us imagine an older man, his hair as white as the winter snows of his youth, walking slowly along a narrow dirt path that winds through this meadow. He wears a simple, warm woolen sweater, and he leans gently on a smooth wooden walking stick. His steps are slow, measured, and deeply thoughtful. He is not walking to get anywhere. He is simply walking to remember. Many, many years ago, when he was just a boy with wide eyes and a heart full of unspoken fears, he walked across this exact same stretch of earth. Back then, the air was thick with the dust of broken roads, and the horizon was heavy with the terrifying weight of the unknown. But today, under the incredibly clear, soft blue sky, he stops. He closes his eyes and tilts his face upward, letting the warm, golden sunlight wash over his withered skin. He listens to the wind moving through the grass. To him, it is not just the sound of nature. It is the sound of whispers. The steppe holds the echoes of everyone who ever walked across it. As the old man stands there, wrapped in the profound peace of the afternoon, he doesn't remember the grand, sweeping storms of the era. He doesn't think of the roaring machines or the bitter cold. Instead, the whispers bring back the incredibly quiet, gentle moments that saved his humanity. He remembers a night, so incredibly dark and cold, when a stranger from a different village handed him a beautifully carved wooden spoon so he could eat his warm soup. He remembers the incredibly soft, comforting sound of his best friend humming a quiet lullaby while they huddled together beneath a canvas tarp, waiting for the dawn. He remembers the smell of rain on the dry earth, and the miraculous, beautiful sight of a single yellow butterfly landing on the edge of his heavy leather boot during a long, exhausting march. These are the beautiful, fragile fragments that remain when the loud noises of history finally fade away. The love, the shared warmth, the profound resilience of the human spirit, these are the things that endure. The old man smiles, a soft, gentle curving of his lips. He whispers a quiet word of thanks into the breeze, a blessing for the boys who walked beside him, and a blessing for the earth that now holds them in such a beautiful, peaceful embrace. Far away from this quiet meadow, in a small, dusty attic illuminated by a single, golden shaft of afternoon sunlight, a young woman is kneeling beside an old wooden trunk. The air in the attic smells sweet and nostalgic, like old paper, dried lavender, and the comforting dust of forgotten years. She carefully opens the lid of the trunk. Inside, resting perfectly beneath a folded, moth-eaten woolen blanket, is a small bundle of letters tied together with a faded piece of blue ribbon. She gently unties the ribbon, the fabric incredibly soft and frail in her hands. She unfolds the top letter. The paper is yellowed with age, its edges worn soft and incredibly thin from being touched so many times. The ink has faded to a pale, watery blue, but the beautiful, slanted handwriting is still clear. It is a letter written by a young boy on the front lines, sent back to his mother, a mother who has long since passed away. The young woman reading it is her granddaughter. She traces her fingertip lightly over the words, bridging the vast ocean of time that separates them. The letter does not speak of the terrifying vastness of the war. It does not carry the heavy, dark weight of the winter. Instead, it reads, "The nights here are very long, but the moon is the exact same moon that shines over our kitchen window. I look at it every night and know that you are sleeping safely beneath it. Please do not worry for me. The birch trees here are beautiful, and I have made a good friend who shares his tea with me. I carry your love in my pocket, and it keeps me very warm." A single, incredibly soft tear falls from the young woman's eye, landing gently on the edge of the paper. It is a tear of profound, beautiful connection. In reading those simple, everyday words, she brings the young boy back to life for just a fleeting moment. She feels his deep, quiet love for his mother. She feels his incredible, gentle bravery in the face of the unknown. These quiet, personal artifacts, the faded letters, the pressed wildflowers, the simple, rusted tin cups left behind in the earth, are the true heartbeats of the past. They remind us that behind every grand, sweeping narrative, there were simply millions of ordinary, beautiful human beings, desperately holding on to love, kindness, and the dream of returning home. As we come to the close of this incredibly long, deeply emotional journey across the Eastern Plains, it is so important to gather these whispers and keep them safe. We have walked together through the warm, dusty silence of the summer nights, through the heavy, weeping rains of the autumn, into the blinding, freezing labyrinth of the winter snows, and finally, into the gentle, forgiving thaw of the spring. We have seen that even in the absolute darkest of nights, the human heart can produce a tiny, miraculous spark of warmth. Gathering these incredibly fragile stories, sifting through the heavy sands of time to find the quiet voices of the past, is a profound labor of love. It requires deep care, immense patience, and an unwavering dedication to preserving the unvarnished, beautiful humanity of those who lived it. If this journey has brought you a sense of peace, if these gentle stories have touched your heart, I would be incredibly grateful if you might consider supporting this work. As this documentary comes to a close, you can leave a small tip, even just a single $1, on my Ko-Fi page to help support the massive research and time it takes to craft these stories. It truly feels like a warm hand on my shoulder, helping to keep this history beautifully alive. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Thank you, from the very bottom of my heart, for listening and for walking this path with me. The sun is beginning its incredibly slow, graceful descent over the vast, open steppe. The bright, cheerful blue of the afternoon sky slowly melts into soft, breathtaking shades of peach, lavender, and a rich, dusty rose. The tall grass catches the fading golden light, turning the entire meadow into a beautifully glowing, amber sea. The old man with the wooden walking stick has finally turned around, making his way slowly back toward his small, quiet house on the edge of the plain. He leaves no heavy footprints behind him, only the incredibly gentle bending of the grass, which slowly, beautifully springs back upright as soon as he passes. The wind begins to settle, dropping its voice to the softest, most peaceful whisper. It wraps around the ancient birch trees, gently rustling their leaves in a slow, rhythmic lullaby. It sweeps over the forgotten trenches, over the places where the heavy machines once stood, and over the quiet, unmarked resting places hidden deep within the earth. It sings a song of complete, absolute peace. The twilight deepens, wrapping the world in a heavy, comforting blanket of indigo. One by one, the stars begin to appear in the vast, open sky. They are the exact same stars that the young boys looked up at all those years ago. They twinkle with a soft, eternal light, completely untouched by the passing of time, watching over the sleeping earth with a gentle, silent grace. Close your eyes, and let the immense, beautiful quiet of the steppe wash over you. Let the soft, rustling sound of the grass soothe your tired mind. The long march is finally over. The heavy coats have been put away. The incredible, profound resilience of the human spirit has outlasted the deepest cold and the darkest nights. There is nothing left to fear in this vast, open landscape. There is only the incredibly soft, whispering breeze, the gentle warmth of the remembered sun, and the deep, profound safety of the present moment. Breathe in the sweet, cool night air. Let your shoulders completely relax. The earth is resting now, and it is time for you to rest, too. Drift away on the gentle, whispering wind, safe and warm, held beautifully in the incredibly peaceful, eternal quiet of the sleeping world.